Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1485 of the War News stream. And tonight we have more big news yet again. We are seeing that U.S. officials today have urgently deployed a second Marine Forces unit to Iran under very quick circumstances, to say the least. We've also seen that Iran opened fire today on a U.S. F-35 fighter jet, and we're not really sure what happened to it, but it looks like something bad has taken place with that jet. And also, we've seen massive strikes on Tehran and the missile sites today with U.S. airstrikes, and it is massive destruction, and we have very big news today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours in the news from around the world, as we've been able to see some significant developments inside the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and other regions around the entirety of the world. We have been able to hear that the United States of America has officially announced as of today that the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group, based out of the United States Indo-Pacific Command, will now be diverted along with the USS Tripoli's Amphibious Ready Group, which is already underway at this moment, towards the area of the Middle East. It is expected that the USS Boxer's Amphibious Ready Group will be arriving within the next 2 weeks, and the USS Tripoli, which is already past Singapore right now and is somewhere just around the Strait of Malacca, will most likely be arriving within the Middle East within just a few days from now. This is giving us a larger indicator at the moment that ground operations by the United States of America are beginning to become a higher likelihood, and if any sorts of ground operations are conducted, they most likely will revolve around the concept of an amphibious landing. Meanwhile, the United States Air Forces of the United States Air Force and the Fleet Air Arm of the United States Navy have been conducting significant strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran's forces near to the area of the Strait of Hormuz today. Reports have emerged that Missile City has come under direct fire over the course of the day, which is a significant underground compound used by the Islamic Republic of Iran to base and operate missile forces of their air defense, rocket forces, and also anti-ship forces within the area around the Strait of Hormuz and the southern coast of Iran. Additionally, more Iranian naval targets have been hit at Bandar Lengeh, which is directly to the western area of the Strait of Hormuz. We've also been able to hear that currently the IRGC is still holding down and doggedly continuing to conduct their blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, but is facing even greater pressure at this moment by the concerted U.S. efforts and offensive that is currently ongoing within this area, attempting to start to break up Iranian forces and make it far easier to break this blockade within the next several weeks. Meanwhile, we've also been able to report that currently the situation within the Strait of Hormuz is still worsening, as 3,200 ships are currently reaching the very peak capacity of their supplies on board, meaning that they are largely running out of food and water to be able to keep their crews on board and keep the vessels at a minimum level of operational capability. This means that right now we're seeing that around 3,200 ships will require some sort of a replenishment or resupply, which is something that will be fairly significant and challenging to conduct in the current conditions with the scale of ships that would have to be resupplied at this moment. Additionally, large strikes have been conducted on Tehran throughout the course of the day, and we've actually been able to get news just minutes before we went live that the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital is being bombed once again, either by U.S. or Israeli forces, and the strikes appear to be fairly significant. The Islamic Republic of Iran has been trying to fire back today, and was able to land a hit within the northern area of Iraq, and several hits inside of Israel, including on the refinery complex in Haifa, a significant target within the state of Israel, and also several hits within Tel Aviv itself. We were able to announce as well today that the larger amount of the Arabian nations, if we want to call them that, have announced by decree through a unanimous decision that the Islamic Republic of Iran must stop their attacks. This open statement did not lead to any sort of threats of reprisals if the Iranians do not stop the attacks, but we're largely believing that it might have some sort of an insinuation that if the Iranians do not stop attacks on the Gulf states will respond with force of arms finally against the Islamic Republic of Iran after about 3.5 weeks of near inactivity by those countries. We've also been able to announce that the Charles de Gaulle carrier strike group is currently north of Cyprus in the eastern Mediterranean, but the French have once again reiterated that they will not be getting involved in any form of offensive strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran, or for that matter, any attempts to clear the Strait of Hormuz at this moment either, and will only be conducting transits through the area of the southern Red Sea or the Strait of Aden, and also will be continuing to defend their allies within the region across the entirety of the Middle East. More major news has come out outside of the Middle East alone, as the United States was seen to be conducting some significant flights along the peninsula today, including some specialized aircraft, which may be suggesting that they're expecting some sort of a heavier action by the Korean People's Army in North Korea at some point in the near future. We've also been able to hear that there's been a major cyber breach within the People's Republic of China today, as a larger computer server appears to have just completely ruptured wide open that the People's Republic of China had used for military purposes for the People's Liberation Army, and it's given us a decent look and insight into what the Chinese have been working on in the background. We've also been able to hear that today an incredibly odd incident has occurred, and we were able to confirm that United States CENTCOM announced that a U.S. F-35 Lightning had been hit by an air defense missile over the Islamic Republic of Iran, but the story about that is a little confusing. Apparently, the F-35 was capable and able to fly after being hit, and had apparently returned and conducted an emergency landing at an airbase somewhere within the region. We are seeing, however, that the Iranian footage that came out, although it doesn't really show any seconds after the impact, almost makes it appear that the aircraft directly broke up immediately after the direct hit. We're trying to get a little bit more information on that at the moment, but it does appear that an F-35 was targeted today by air defense systems, which is the first time that we've seen a 5th generation stealth aircraft being targeted and attempted to be hit and even being damaged at all by air defense systems. This now also degrades our air supremacy in the Islamic Republic of Iran back down to air superiority only, as there are still existent air threats and air defense systems that are operational within the Islamic Republic of Iran. Further than that, the Russian Federation is currently attempting to pass a law within the Duma that will allow President Putin to declare war on largely NATO countries for any reason, in the claim that they are trying to defend Russian citizens abroad. We've also seen that an Su-30 of the Russian Air Force did violate Estonian airspace once again today and flew near to a small island that Estonia controls within the Gulf of Finland. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces have been landing significant blows to the Russian Federation's armed forces over the course of the day, leading to significant losses and also a continued loss of ground for the Russian Federation's armed forces and army within the area. The Russian Federation's military bloggers also appear to be continuing to stir civil dissent and are stating that the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, has betrayed the Russian people and the Russian Federation itself, and that the war has been an unmitigated and absolute failure thanks and only to his control and command of the country. We've also been able to get some other significant developments out of Washington, D.C., but we'll be covering all of those and all of this other major news over the course of this stream, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller news throughout the night. But before we get to any of that, we just had breaking news come out at this moment right now. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so as usual, right at the very beginning of our stream, Iran, the Israelis, the United States, they decide that it's time to start acting up. It's time to put on a show for the live stream. That's basically what they're doing. So right now we're seeing that this time the joke is on Tehran, apparently. We're seeing Tehran is getting lit up by huge airstrikes. And when I say huge, I mean massive airstrikes right now. We're seeing explosions at the Parchin missile facility inside of Tehran. We're also seeing explosions across literally pretty much every region of Tehran, including the IRGC base in Kerman, Iran as well. And let's see here. I'm also seeing strikes happening in the eastern part of Tehran, and we're seeing active air defense fire. It looks like the Iranians actually still have air defense, which kind of goes contrary to the U.S. reports that's been made recently. So what a situation right this second. Enforcer, we have about 3 or 4 videos to show the people of what's going on right now, but this is a big situation.
And it certainly does appear to be so. This actually seems to be a sweeping air campaign that we're seeing at the moment, or an airstrike sortie that we're seeing being conducted on multiple cities, as we're seeing the Tehran, Kerman, and also areas. One second, folks. Dang, sorry folks about
bless
that.
You.
Thank you. I am indeed blessed. But beyond that, let me put down these markers really quickly, folks, so that way y'all can access them on the map. And this map is accessible, by the way, folks. Link in the description below, and y'all can actually see all of the markers that are on the map and are being put on the map live here on air. So really quickly, I just want to make sure that we got all of that, and also get our second clip at Parchin before we start to go through each and every single one of them and give y'all an idea of what we're seeing on the ground right now that is literally happening just as we went live.
Also, while you're still collecting that information right there, another piece of news, we're currently hearing that there's alerts going off right now, apparently inside of, I'm trying to get the name real quick, it looks like the UAE is currently saying that air defense systems are responding to a missile threat as we speak, and they're telling people to go to a safe location. So the UAE is apparently under attack while Tehran is under attack. So it looks like Iran is actively counterattacking the Gulf states as they're getting struck.
And it does appear that that is also happening simultaneously as well, folks. We were able to just get that on air at the moment right now. And so to bring y'all through the bits of news that we were able to just get at this moment that has all happened simultaneously, right when we were going live, we were able to see that within the area of the Parchin missile facility and also military facility of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that significant airstrikes have landed within the area. We'll be showing y'all that right here. I'm so sorry, folks. I'm trying to fight back another sneeze at the moment, so I'm trying my best. But here's the first clip that we have from the area around Parchin. Well, you see what appears to be Gushgun air defense fire. Largely indirect air defense fire. It's more so a mass saturation tactic that's used with that sort of air defense. This is not radar guided and generally doesn't even know where the air threats are, but we can see some limited air defense within that area. We also were able to see some explosions occurring not long after the air defense fire in this clip right here, once again confirming that additional strikes have been landed within the area of the Parchin missile complex. Not only that, but within the metropolitan city of Tehran, just a couple of miles north and west of Parchin, there were also several major explosions from Israeli airstrikes, or at least believed Israeli airstrikes at the moment within the city, which we're able to see in these clips right here. We see a large explosion at the beginning of the video, and then we can see here not long after that it appears that the skies have once again darkened and that the area is largely silent. Oddly enough, none of these clips, folks, actually have any audio, which is a little bit weird because I was expecting some sort of sound in the video. Meanwhile, moving us further on down and into the southeastern region of the Islamic Republic of Iran, once again simultaneously, while the strikes were going on at Parchin and Tehran, the city of Kerman, a fairly large city for this region of the Islamic Republic of Iran, was also hit by airstrikes as well, which we were able to see in this clip right here.
Hearing some commotion out there as well, it sounds like.
It certainly does appear that people are startled by the explosions. It appears that this is largely a rolling barrage of guided bombs that are coming in on specific target within the city, most likely an IRGC facility or munitions facility. So it does appear that we are seeing larger sweeping airstrikes at this very moment live on air across the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran as we just went live. Once again, a lot of these attacks are generally being directed towards what could be described as strategic targets at this point. We've seen that a lot of U.S. air campaigns or U.S. sorties conducted by the Air Force and the Navy are generally more so targeting and attempting to destroy the actual Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' fighting forces more so than the Iranian government, although the Israeli Air Forces are still generally conducting targets on basically everything, including military targets, civilian targets, or dual-purpose infrastructure, like, for example, the gas facilities near to the Pars oil field and gas field in the south, and also the Iranian government itself. But we actually have even more breaking news coming out at this moment on the midst of the breaking news that we just got done covering. So, Matthew, what else do we have that's coming out at this moment right now?
Okay, so in addition to the United Arab Emirates getting attacked, we are seeing that apparently Dubai has put out a statement. The statement from Dubai it says this verbatim. It says the competent authorities in Dubai, also very kind of themselves to call themselves competent, they said that they confirmed that the sounds have been heard in various areas of the Dubai Emirate, and they're the result of successful interceptions by air defenses. So Dubai and the UAE is claiming that they've shot the stuff down. That's what they're claiming right now. So it sounds like maybe they're taking care of the situation possibly, and they say they're competent authorities, so we have hope. We also see here that apparently Bahrain is also reporting something as well. The Bahrainian Ministry of the Interior says, due to the sinful Iranian aggression, a fire in a warehouse of one of the companies following the fall of shrapnel, and the civil defense was able to control the fire without any injuries occurring. So we're seeing that Bahrain, also the UAE and Dubai, they're also getting hit. And we're also seeing that Kuwait is also saying they're currently confronting a hostile missile threat, of a missile threat and a drone threat. So Iran's launching a wide swipe across all the Gulf states again. And this is probably, obviously, for the attack that's happening right now in Tehran. So it looks to be a pretty big tit for tat going down right now at this hour.
And it does appear that that is certainly the case. We've been able to hear that also within Kuwait, there's now been an air raid alert that has been put out as well, also indicating that while the UAE is under attack, Kuwait is under attack, and we would also assume the Bahrain statement is about the current ongoing attack, and we'll also be assuming that probably here in the very near future, Qatar will also be putting out a statement as well, most likely stating that they are also under attack, considering that these Gulf state nations are pretty much the early warning system at this point for incoming attacks that are either hitting them or are going to be going deeper into the Middle East and trying to strike targets inside of Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere throughout the region. But this is giving us a fairly large idea that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not going to be heeding the warning that was just put out a little while ago by the Gulf states and generally the, I guess you could say, the Pan-Arabian Alliance, as these following countries have made this statement. Qatar, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and the UAE issued a joint statement calling for Iran to immediately halt its attacks after holding a meeting in Riyadh. And to actually read y'all the statement from the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or more so the state of Qatar's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, this is their statement. And I'm going to have to put on magnifying glasses to read this, but we're still going to read it for y'all nonetheless. Their Highness and Excellencies, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar, the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the State of Kuwait, the Republic of Lebanon, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Syrian Arab Republic, the Republic of Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates held a consultative ministerial meeting on Wednesday, 29th of Ramadan, 1447 AH, corresponding to 18th of March, 2026, Anno Domini, in Riyadh regarding the Iranian attacks. The ministers discussed the Iranian attacks on the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Republic of Turkey, and they reaffirmed their condemnation and denunciation of these Iranian deliberate attacks with ballistic missiles and drones which targeted residential areas, civilian infrastructure, including oil facilities, desalination plants, airports, residential buildings, and diplomatic premises. The ministers further affirmed that such attacks cannot be justified under any pretext or in any manner whatsoever. The ministers also stressed the right of states to defend themselves in accordance with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The ministers called on Iran immediately to halt its attacks and affirmed the necessity necessity of respecting international law, international humanitarian law, and the principle of good neighborliness as a first toward ending the escalation and achieving security and stability in the region, and promoting diplomacy as a means to resolve crisis. The minister further emphasized that the further relations with Iran depends on respecting the sovereignty of states and non-interference in their internal affairs, as well as refraining from violating their sovereignty on their territories in any manner whatsoever, and not to use or develop its military capabilities to threaten countries of the region. The minister stressed the need for Iran to abide by implementing the Security Council Resolution 2817 of 2026, which called for an immediate halt to all the attacks and unconditional cessation of any provocative acts or threats against neighboring states, and the cessation of support, financing, and arming its affiliated militias in Arab countries, which Iran is doing to serve its goals and against the interest of these countries. Furthermore, to refrain from any measures or threats aimed at closing or obstructing international navigation in the Strait of Hormuz or threatening maritime security in Bab al-Mandab. The ministers reaffirmed support for their security, stability, and territorial integrity of Lebanon, activating the sovereignty of the Lebanese state over all its territories, and supporting the Lebanese government's decision to limit weapons to the state. They also condemned Israel's aggression against Lebanon and its expansionist policy in the region. The ministers reaffirmed their commitment to continuing intensive consultation and coordination in this regard to monitor developments and assess emerging issues in a way that ensure the formulation of common positions and the adoption of necessary legitimate measures and procedures to protect their security, stability, and sovereignty, and to halt Iranian heinous attacks on their territories. So that is the statement.
Man. They should probably just save their paper. I mean, that was a waste of a statement there.
I mean, honestly, man, that was one hell of a statement. I mean, this was almost in the font for ants. I mean, that was like almost impossible to read that whole thing.
It's like, what did they write that with AI or something? It's like, what a worthless statement.
I mean, dude, they said, ChatGPT, like, condemn the Iranians, but don't make it too harsh. But that is the statement that was made today, and I gotta be honest with y'all, folks, kind of skipping ahead considering that the Iranians are attacking all of these nations right now. Beyond the long-winded statement, I wanted to make sure to read that in its totality to all of y'all to kind of get out what the Gulf states and a lot of these nations are getting out, which is a whole lot of words, but it really doesn't say anything, because they're not threatening reciprocal actions against the Iranians for continued attacks, meaning that this has no deterrent effect because the Iranians are not concerned at this moment about any of these countries possibly joining in and striking Iran as well, because they're not even insinuating that they would, meaning that Iran could still do whatever it wants against any of those countries, against us, against Israel, and everyone else in the region, and not really have to worry about the combatant forces growing to any force larger than just the United States and Israel that is currently within that front. So I'd have to say that while it's an interesting statement, and it's good to see that they're all on the same page that nobody likes to get bombed in the region, maybe they want to do a little bit more towards the end of making sure that there's a deterrent to bombing them. Like, for example, if you bomb Saudi Arabia again, heads are going to be rolling in Iran. Maybe that would be a more proper statement that they should be making at this point, considering that the Iranians are attacking all of those countries again right now, and that strongly worded letter, well, it wasn't even strongly worded, that politely worded letter really didn't do much of anything for any of those countries today, because we're now seeing that Iran is attacking them all once more, only hours after that statement was issued.
Yeah, I would say so. It's about time for some actions instead of just words right there. And especially if you're going to issue a statement with words in it, at least make the words count. Like, don't just, like, bloviate through the whole thing. It's like we'd prefer something with some meaning behind it.
I mean, really, honestly. Moving on from that, speaking of which, while the Middle Eastern countries are still trying to figure out where they are, and also I want to say, folks, that for the Middle Eastern countries, this is a little complicated. It's not really easy for them to do something like this because there's a million different foreign policy avenues that they look at that we don't really care about here in the United States and generally in the West. For example, generally Islamic countries, even between the Sunnis and the Shiites, kind of are supposed to look at themselves as brotherly nations, as according to the words of the Quran. All of the sons and daughters of Allah are equal and should be treated fairly. So there's generally that sort of a theological premise going on, because unlike the United States, which officially doesn't have a religion, most every Middle Eastern state is officially a religiously, theocratically driven Islamic state. And while Iran is an Islamic regime, most other countries are Islamic kingdoms, meaning that they generally have to keep up some sort of a semblance of maintaining religious norms and religious customs within the region. Secondly, There's also the chance that the Iranians could start to ramp up reciprocal attacks against critical infrastructure pertaining to oil and gas within a large amount of these countries as they get involved in the conflict, even farther than what they're doing right now to them, which is another thing that they're trying to weigh into the equation, because what if the Iranians start to conduct significant attacks like that? Monetary losses could start to become significant, even more so than they are right now, and maybe by keeping their head down and not really getting directly involved, even with them getting hit a little bit here and there, they're trying to maybe game it out that maybe the damage could be mitigated by not getting directly involved and just kind of, turning a blind eye to all of this. But I'd have to say that at this point, I think the truth is, folks, is that there really is no way for any of these countries to keep turning a blind eye. The Iranians are going to keep hitting them because the Iranians do not care what in the world these countries' positions are. I would say that it'd be far smarter at this point for these countries to join in an offensive coalition with us to hit the Iranians, because that will clearly be, unlike anyone else in the world, clearly would be within their own interest and would generally make the bombings that are happening in their countries be hopefully shorter lived by the larger amount of firepower that could be levied against them on any given day for the next several weeks or the next several months. While the Middle Eastern countries are trying to figure all that out, the United States seems to be working towards an idea or a concept that the president largely stated is not going to happen. Specifically speaking, I have to make this clear today. The president stated that we are never going to be putting troops on the ground inside of Iran. I mean, that was a clear statement that was made today. While that statement was made, the order was given by the President of the United States to deploy the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group from the United States of America and towards CENTCOM's area of responsibility. This will be joining the USS Tripoli's carrier strike group, which is already underway and we believe is past the Strait of Malacca at this moment. It's getting on into the Indian Ocean, which is already going to be making its way towards the area of U.S. Central Command and will be coming under their command here probably within the next week or maybe the next few days or so. Currently, the USS Boxer, which is a WASP-class amphibious assault ship, or more so an LHD specifically, is currently followed by the USS Comstock and the USS Portland, which are amphibious support vessels. These amphibious ready groups are designed to be able to conduct amphibious warfare. Amphibious warfare meaning that you are conducting ship-to-shore operations to put troops somewhere on a coastline. So we now are understanding that not only is the USS Tripoli, which is technically an LHA, is currently underway with its amphibious ready group to the Middle East, but we now understand that it's going to be joined by a second. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, or the 11th MEU,
Yes.
that is on board the Boxer.
Yes, that is correct. It's the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit right there. So the first one came from Asia. This one's coming from the West Coast. So it is interesting, by the way, because I think this one right here is set to arrive in like 4 weeks. This one is coming from the West Coast. The one coming from Asia, I think, is set to be there a lot quicker than that, obviously, because it's closer geographically. But it's interesting, though. They chose to send 2 of them. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, what kind of firepower are we talking here with 2 of these expeditionary groups? What kind of what type of objectives could those take?
Well, that's quite interesting, Matthew, and that is almost a scripted question. And crazily enough, folks, it isn't. But it's a perfect question for me to be able to segue into the differences between the Tripoli's Amphibious Ready Group and the USS Boxer's Amphibious Ready Group. There's actually a humongous distinction between the two, in that the USS Boxer's Amphibious Ready Group can actually conduct amphibious landings with light armor support from the well deck on board that WASP-class vessel. This right here is the USS Boxer in a little bit of a better picture. To give you all an idea, I don't know why I'm sneezing so much tonight, folks. I'm so sorry.
Man. What, are you allergic to like deployments or something? What's wrong with you?
You know, it's almost like I'm maybe allergic to U.S. Marines going on shore. But moving on from that, the USS Boxer is technically a WASP-class amphibious ship, which is very different than the America-class landing helicopter assault ship that the USS Tripoli and its amphibious ready group generally revolves and operates around. The WASP-class, particularly the USS Boxer, carries a pretty decent complement of equipment. And to try and get y'all through a little bit of it, or at least a little bit of its capabilities, on board it has 6 AV-8B Harrier II attack aircraft, or in the modern day, it probably has something more along the lines of 6 F-35B Lightning IIs. Then there's also 4 AH-1Z Super Cobras, 12 MV-22B Ospreys, 4 CH-53 Super Stallions, which are the big boys of the Marine Corps, They also have 3 to 4 UH-1Y Venoms, and then they also have an additional 22 for an assault complement, MV-22B Ospreys, which could be operated from the vessel, and it's a fairly, well, actually, sorry, folks, correction here. That's the standard complement. For an assault complement, it would just be basically nothing but Ospreys, about 22 of them, and then for sea control, it would either be 20 AVAB Harriers or 20 F-35B Lightnings, and additional 6 Seahawk helicopters. So generally, the complement, at least in terms of amphibious air power, would be pretty significant. But what makes the Wasp class special compared to the America class is that this one has an operational and usable well deck. And let me go see if I can show you all the Wasp class well deck really quickly, because it's a very important thing to be able to show all y'all. So this right here is the well deck inside of there, and this allows for the Wasp to basically be hell, a landing ship is the best way to describe it, at least as I could think of it. But how this would work in reality, and this is very different than how the LHAs of the America class work, is that this vessel, along with its amphibious ready group, would be able to get close to shore, about a couple of miles away. It would then be able to submerge its well deck right there, as you can see in this example, and then it would be able to offload a significant amount of amphibious vehicles, LAVs, and such as that, and they would be able to waddle their way, or wade as it's called, their way to the shore, and then would be able to land, depositing about a squad of Marines, or really more so a fire team or two of Marines each, onto the coastline that could then be supported by the amphibious elements of the air power on board the USS Boxer and the USS America, and then could further see that more Marines are deposited on shore by the MV-22 Ospreys of this vessel, or the other helicopters of the other ships like the USS Comstock inside of that amphibious ready group. Meaning that right now, with the 31st MEU and the 11th MEU on board both of these ARGs, we're actually seeing that there will be about 7,000 Marines that could land on shore within about a 24-hour time frame of an amphibious landing commencing.
That's honestly a lot of forces. Actually, two of those combined together seems like it's a pretty damn lot of forces for there to be no alleged ground invasion happening anywhere inside of Iran. So there's a whole bunch of speculation. We've gone over this before about what they could be deploying these forces to actually go take. It could be some of the islands near the coast of Iran. It could be Karg Island, the crown jewel of the oil exports coming from Iran. It could be that as well, or it could be maybe an invasion of the actual Iranian coastline itself. That's another possibility. Or it could be posturing. That's also, I guess you'd say, a fourth option as well. But I mean, this is a lot of forces for it to merely be just posturing. This seems like it's probably something a lot more serious than that. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think they're planning on doing something pretty big.
I think they are. Also, by the way, I forget, I saw some people mentioning some stuff, and I have to say, folks, that talking about the capabilities of an LHD, which I know way more about than an LHA, is something that I could go on and on about, but I'm trying to paraphrase it a little bit. But I saw some people bring up something that's pretty big in the chat that I completely glossed over, and so I need to go back and talk about it. The Wasp class, because it is an LHD and it has a well deck, can actually bring along LCACs, which are the famous hovercraft of the Marine Corps that can be deployed out of the well deck of the Wasp class, and also the other amphibious support ships like the USS Comstock, and can bring with them to shore a significant amount of armor. Generally, LCACs can carry, I believe, about 2 Abrams at their max load capacity, or a decent amount of lighter armor like LAV, amphibious, or more so armor personnel carriers or infantry fighting vehicles, if we want to call them that, and would be able to go right up onto the shore, deflate its cushion, and then drop that front landing gate, and then they'd be able to start offloading all these aircraft, well, all these vehicles more so. Sorry, correction there, folks. The importance about a well deck, at least in these sorts of operations, is that infantry is great, but infantry with armor is even better. Armor can provide a good bit more of direct fire support on the ground when air support may not be available, or air support may be tied up in another area near to the beachhead, and for that reason, this gives it a little bit of additional suppressing fire, which allows for those Marine Expeditionary units, once they land on shore, to have a little bit of additional support, and also an ability to carry along additional ammo inside of these vehicles, and to also be able to see that they might be able to be a little bit more aggressive with their offensive once they create their beachhead, and might be able to push a little bit further inland, because instead of being scared that, a round is going to hit directly onto their arm or their leg, they can actually generally kind of ride in with one of these, get some covering fire support, and then start to clear buildings with this thing hanging out right outside. So that way, if there is a building that has, say, elements of the IRGC in it, they start slamming it with a Bushmaster on one of these LAVs instead of having to clear the room with a couple of grenades and a clearing team. So generally, this is a very important thing to see for an amphibious landing operation, and I'd have to be honest with y'all folks, with 2 entire amphibious ready groups being sent with their amphibious support ships, the LHDs and the LHAs, I would have to be honest with y'all, regardless of the statements of the president, the likelihood of a ground operation in Iran is increasing quite a good bit. And a lot of people are wondering what kind of targets could possibly be seen for the Islamic Republic of Iran to watch submarines possibly come up on shore at some point. And a lot of people are putting in some ideas. Some people are saying that it might be to take Karg Island. Other people are saying that it might be directed around the Strait of Hormuz. And I would have to generally say, folks, that once again, you have to kind of reach step 1. You have to clear out what's in front of you to get to what's ahead. And so to get to Karg Island, at least for these groups, they would first have to clear a way through the Strait of Hormuz to make it to Karg Island to then conduct an amphibious landing. So my chips would generally be on, if anything's going to be happening soon, it's going to be around the Strait of Hormuz and not Karg Island. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this is a very urgent deployment, by the way. This second Marine unit that was deployed from the west coast of the United States, it left quickly. And also, we're hearing that the other one that left from Asia has also been urgently dispatched as well. So they're trying to get them on the move as quick as possible because they see that the Strait of Hormuz situation is not going so well, and it can't afford to stay closed for months. So that's why they're trying to rush this thing into operational status. So what is the new military objective now that a second Marine expeditionary unit has been sent? It looks like people are split on this one. 39% said to invade Iran's coastline. That's the reason, while 38% said it's still to take Karg Island of the oil exports, and 12% said they think it's merely posturing for the most part. And I would say, due to the large size of this deployment with 2 of these groups going to the Mideast, I would say it's certainly not posturing. I think it is an actual operational situation they're trying to put into motion. And, here's something I want to point out. Karg Island has been of personal interest to the president for actually quite some time. Like, even before he was the president, he was speaking about Karg Island specifically. He's generally had a fascination with it for some reason, and also mentioned that he would try to hit Karg Island if he was the president, and there was a war with Iran. So there's an ongoing interest there. So I think that they might be fixated on Karg Island. I think that might be it. And that would be actually very strategic if we could take it. But my only concern is, since we really don't have full control over the coastline of Iran, that means Iran can fire at our forces on Karg Island, and it could be like a fish in a barrel situation. So, I'm not sure how we're planning on protecting our troops if we actually invade Karg Island. But at the same time, though, I can't deny that if the U.S. was able to successfully take it and not have many casualties from it, that would be a massive strategic victory and give the United States a lot of leverage over the Iranian economy. That would actually be it would probably actually change the situation quite a bit if they were able to take it and hold it. So I'm with the 39%. I think they're going for Karg. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to be with the 39%. Generally, the 39% on which one is the question, but I'd have to be with the 39% on the idea of it possibly being around Iran's coastline. But I generally would have to say I'd have to change that poll answer to kind of fit exactly what I'm saying, which is something pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz. And it could be directly onshore on the mainland, or it could be an attempt to try and take some of the larger islands like Kashim, Larak, Hormuz, or even the smaller islands like Abu Musa, Siri, or the Greater Tum or Farur, which are just to the west of the Strait of Hormuz and are generally near to the vital shipping lanes within the international waters of the area. I would say that's probably what's going to be done, because if we talk in realistic senses, folks, even with the great obsession that there is around Karg Island, if Germany wants to invade Poland, where in the world did they have to go first? Well, they can't go to Warsaw. They had to go to Poznan, and they had to push through there. When the United States landed in Normandy, and we said we're going to be to Berlin and by this Christmas, where did we land first? Well, we didn't land in Berlin. We landed on the beaches of Normandy, and then we had to make our way towards Berlin over the next year and a half, and then we didn't even get to take Berlin. When we talk about, say, for example, the U.S. Civil War, when the Army of the Union said, we're going to march on Montgomery, which was the capital of the Confederacy at the early part of the war, where in the world did they go first? Well, they had to attempt to try and make it through Tennessee and elsewhere. And when we talk about military strategy, we always have to remember that just because we have an end goal, like, say, Karg Island, which probably would be the crown jewel of this sort of a campaign in the Gulf, we also have to remember that there is a stepping stone that has to be made to get there first. Because you can't jump over everything and then get there, because that would start to pose some major strategic issues, like, for example, how do the amphibious ready groups even make it to Karg Island when they can't get through the Strait of Hormuz? And considering that they have to travel over water, that means they have to go through Hormuz, meaning that would have to be cleared first. So I would say that they're probably going to be directing their energies first and foremost, if we're going to watch anything imminently happen, around the Strait of Hormuz area primarily. Now, I'd have to be entirely honest with y'all with how this deployment is being staggered a little bit to where the Tripoli is going to be arriving soon and the Boxer is going to arrive about a month from now, or 3 weeks to a month from now. One, this is giving us an idea that they're well expecting this to last at least 2 months. And then two, this is also giving us another understanding. The USS Tripoli is not a Wasp-class LHD. It's actually an America-class LHA. And let me go show you all that really quickly because the difference is important, and I think it's going to give us a little bit of a better idea of what's to come. Here is the Tripoli, by the way. I have to say that I actually think the Tripoli looks better, the America class looks better than the Wasp class, but as far as the Wasp class, it's actually a little bit more versatile. But this is an LHA, and it doesn't have a built-in well deck. This means that it is specialized for amphibious aerial operations. And I think that the reason why this has been sent a little bit first, though ahead of the Wasp, is that it's supposed to be using its amphibious air capabilities in support of the U.S. Air Force and the Naval Air Arm to be able to try and clear out most of the anti-ship threats that are in the Strait of Hormuz and the air defense threats that still would exist within this area. Once we see that most of those are cleared out, by that point, the USS Boxer will have most likely arrived, and with the combined power of the 31st MEU and the 11th MEU, then they will probably start to conduct some form of amphibious onshore operations in the Strait of Hormuz, attempting to clear out the area or at least mitigate the threats, and then begin convoy escort duties through the Strait of Hormuz. And then once that's possible, they'll escort those two ARGs through Hormuz, through the Persian Gulf, and then to Karg Island, and then they'll try a direct assault or an attempt to capture on Karg Island itself, but only after they clear the way, at least physically, to be able to get to Karg Island. So I think the first priority will be the Strait of Hormuz with these ARGs.
Maybe so, possibly. I think they might be trying to go for the crown jewel right off the bat. It may not be the wisest thing to do, but I think they might be going straight for Karg Island, because also you have to remember this, that despite the public messaging, it's clear that the Strait of Hormuz situation is critical at this point. The Iranians pretty much have the strait held hostage at this point. No ships are going through, and there's also another brewing crisis as well. All the ships that are stuck in the Persian Gulf right now are not being allowed to dock for the most part at port to restock and also put food back on the ship, so that way the guys on the ship, the sailors, can actually have something to eat. So right now they're about to run low on ship stores when it comes to actually being able to keep the ship operational with fuel and things like that. So that's a big problem as well. So the pressure is on big time to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, and they might be trying to go and skip all the early steps and go straight for the big one in the hopes that they can get this thing fixed soon. That might be what they're going for.
Well, generally, I would say that that probably isn't the case because food is a limitation, but underway replenishment is entirely possible, and the U.S. Navy is the only Navy on the planet that is capable of conducting underway replenishments at speed, meaning that we will most likely have a fleet auxiliary within the area that will be able to provide food and provisions and additional fuel and equipments to those vessels so that way they can continue operations without having to leave the area. There really isn't, say, a time frame like that. For submarines, to an extent, there is, because they're heavily limited unless if they were to surface and then conduct replenishment, which is fairly rare from what I've heard. They're fairly limited to the sort of stores and supplies they have on board, but with surface ships like carriers, destroyers, and such, they can generally stay at sea for a near indefinite period of time, and speaking about 8 months to a year, without ever having to really return back to shore and have to conduct some sort of replenishment or entirely leave the theater and then return after they're able to find some food and water.
Oh, I'm talking about the commercial ships in the Persian Gulf.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like the Lincoln or the
No.
Tripoli.
No, I'm talking about all, there's like hundreds of ships that are stuck up there in the Persian Gulf, like tankers, cargo ships, etc. They can't go through the strait and they can't get out of there, or Iran's going to try to bomb them if they try to go through there. So these commercial ships are just stuck up there in the Persian Gulf. And the catch is, none of these countries that have a coastline with the Persian Gulf are telling these ships that they can dock. They don't want them to dock in the port because they're worried that Iran's going to try to strike them in the port. So they're going to starve if they can't get food. And there's simply too many ships up there that need food. They have to be able to dock, or otherwise it's going to be a crisis.
Well, wouldn't that mean that the priority then would be to clear the Strait of Hormuz instead of taking an oil island so that way the ships can leave and go and try and get food somewhere?
Well, I think the idea behind it would be to take Karg Islands that way, because remember, Karg Islands where 90% of the Iranian oil exports get sent out from is from that island. So if that island is taken by the United States and we control it, we now basically have control over Iran's oil economy at that point, which is going to cause a major issue for all of Iran's friends, including mainly the big one, which is going to be China. So China is going to have a lot of pressure on them at that point to put pressure on their buddies inside of Iran to consider a temporary opening of the strait and probably let some of these ships out. So that way, maybe the U.S. will back off of holding the Karg Island hostage, possibly. That could give the U.S. enough leverage to actually get some leeway.
I think that might be the case, but I think that it would probably be a more sensible approach to just deal with the physical obstacle that's stopping them from leaving instead of trying to try and conduct basically diplomatic gymnastics to see if they could leave. It'd probably be better to just brute force the Strait of Hormuz, knock out most of the anti-ship forces in the area and the air defenses, and then conduct a 24/7 air cover in that area and naval escorts to be able to start getting these ships in and out of the area, so that way they're not, sitting there and basically waiting for the Chinese to eventually lean on Iran heavily enough. And even then, the Iranians might not listen to the Chinese, even if the Chinese are leaning on them heavily and basically starting to try and coerce them into opening the strait, because the Iranians might not listen even still. I feel like it'd probably be a little bit better, in my opinion, if we're speaking on strategy, for us to just physically attempt to reopen the Strait of Hormuz instead of trying to go and take Karg Island and then try and conduct more so an abstract, more sort of a foreign policy approach to see that the pressure is lifted on the strait. We should just see that the Iranians don't have the ability to do that anyways.
Yeah, maybe so, possibly.
But we also have another poll that has been asked of all of y'all, because in the midst of all this today, we've been able to hear, and I have to say, folks, that this is one that, generally I'm kind of understanding it, but at the same time, this absolutely sounds a little goofy, so we're going to let y'all put in y'all's opinions on it. The Secretary of the Treasury stated today in an interview that they were heavily considering the lifting of sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran's oil to lessen the burden on the global oil markets, so that way the price would remain a little bit more stable. So I want to lay this out there to y'all. In the midst of a war with the Iranians, while we're bombing them, and they are bombing us, and they've killed about 8 of our service members directly, and about another 14 in total, not another, but 14 in total have died largely because of the conflict, and hundreds more U.S. soldiers have been wounded, and plenty of countries in the region have suffered an unjust and undue economic burden because of the Iranians' terrorist attacks within the region, are now being seen that by the United States, which is the belligerent against them currently conducting the war against Iran, that the United States is heavily considering lifting the sanctions on the country we are at war at, to see that we lessen the burden on the global oil markets. Now, I gotta say something that's a little bit interesting. I'm just gonna be a little bit honest here and go out on a limb. If we are willing to do that, then we never need to diss on a single ally in Europe again, because if we are helping out Iran to go sell its oil in the middle of us going to war with them, and I get that we were trying to stabilize the oil markets, but we shouldn't be lifting sanctions on them. Why in the hell would we even diss on anyone in Europe at all for not helping us, considering that we're basically going to be screwing ourselves over and letting them finance the war against us, because we're literally allowing them to go sell their oil worldwide? But I'm going to let y'all put in y'all's opinion on it. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so for the first time ever, I think this might be a first in history, actually. While the U.S. is at war with the country, they're considering unsanctioning the exports from that country, specifically when it comes to Iranian oil, to ease the global pressure. And also, by the way, there is a small caveat to it, by the way. They're saying the oil that's already loaded on ships is kind of similar to what they've done with Russia to a large degree, but nonetheless, in practice, it's basically unsanctioning Iran's oil exports to a large degree. So, actually, it seems like a first. So is this insanity? That's the question. 45% said yes, that would be very unwise. 26% said no, it's not insanity. It might be necessary. And 19% said, I'm in shock. Call a doctor. I mean, I'm sorry. That's honestly, I can kind of understand that actually. But I will say, in all seriousness, I'm not really sure how to comprehend this. I'm not just trying to say this to bash, but I really genuinely, when I saw this today, I had to watch the clip because I was like, did he actually say something like that? And he said something very similar to this right here about unsanctioning possibly the Iranian oil exports to ease global pressure. So I was kind of in shock. I kind of needed a doctor earlier today, actually, when I heard that because I was in shock. I was like, let me listen to that a second time. I listened to it a second time. I was like, huh, okay, apparently that's a thing. So I think that would be very unwise because obviously you don't want to fund your enemy while you're at war with them. That seems to be a pretty straightforward thing. So Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be well within the 44%. This is extremely unwise. You know what, Matthew? I got an idea. Instead of doing that, why don't we just fly them over pallets of US dollars in the billions then? You know, like just to make sure that they, keep the situation a little
Jeez,
stable.
man.
You know?
Oh, yeah, you know something. You know what this does indicate, though. Like it, and I know people are gonna get offended. They're gonna be like, "Look, guys, stop being political." I'm not being political. That type of statement right there about doing something like that, that indicates they still don't really have a plan to open the Strait of Hormuz. Because if they're considering unsanctioning the enemy's oil exports instead of simply reopening the strait to fix the oil crisis, this is a band-aid. Is what this is intended to be, and it's a bad band-aid. It's like a band-aid made out of like I don't know, paper mache or something. It's a crappy band-aid. So it's like, I don't know what they're thinking with this. It's really wild.
I've never heard of anything this stupid in my life. Like, I'll be entirely honest with y'all. Like, this is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. That's like saying, oh, you know what? Let's lift the blockade on Germany in 1942. I'm sure that will really help out the global economy. Do you know what that's doing? That's funding the German war machine against us in the Second World War. Who in the hell has ever heard of something like this? I mean, it's so crazy, it's laughable. Like, it's actually a joke, and I'm trying so hard not to laugh at it because this is absolutely insane. We're trying to see that we put the Islamic regime under enough pressure that they collapse or that they can no longer continue the war. So our idea is to make it even easier for them to make money in the middle of the war so that they can try and finance it for even longer. I mean, the stupidity behind that's unreal. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I've never heard of anything such like that in my life. You know, I remember that there was a time, folks, that we were joking and laughing about a certain president of the United States signing a nuclear agreement with Iran that basically meant nothing. You know, it was just basically a goodwill statement by the Iranians that couldn't really be backed up by anything rather than their faith and credit, which is nothing. And then we sent them over some cash on a private jet and pallets. You know, and I remember when people were deriding that whole thing. And so now we're hearing that the Secretary of Treasury is basically saying, you know what, we might actually just allow the Iranian oil companies to make money hand over the fist while we're bombing them. I mean, this is absolutely insanity. I mean, I've never heard of anything like this in my life. You know, in a war, you're generally trying to screw them over logistically, not help them. You're not trying to help their economy and their oil industry. I mean, you know, at this point, maybe we want to just offer them, you know, to that Shell and Exxon might just invest in Iranian oil industries at this point, you know, give them a little stimulus influx. I mean, it's a joke. It's a literal joke. I mean, there's no way that was seriously said, and it was seriously said today. I can't believe that. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, what's the crazy thing about this, folks, is that going off of this, if that happens, the Iranians will make their money off of selling their oil that is currently on those ships at sea, because that's technically what would be allowed. But, you know, there's a little bit of a loophole to that. They could just load up new ships and then have them underway at sea and then say, oh, well, these are clearly, you know, well within the waiver. And then they make that money, and then the Iranian government gets their little bit off the taxes, you know, a little bit off the top, and then they use that to buy a bomb or a drone that they're going to then try and target an American soldier with, and then one day they're going to kill one of them, like they already have with about 8 of them directly, and then 14 of them indirectly, and then they're going to end up seeing that by doing this, there's basically more American soldiers that have died because we're literally allowing the Islamic regime to finance the war by our own hand. Craziness. I mean, like, it really is. But we've also been able to hear of another developing crisis within the Strait of Hormuz, or largely the Gulf at the moment in the area, as we were able to hear that currently 3,200 ships are stuck within the Persian Gulf. A ship called the local port authority within one of these countries requesting permission to dock as they had run out of fresh potable or drinking water, and they were flat out denied permission. Multiple ships are currently in the same condition, with stores, food, and fuel running low. Ports are overwhelmed, and security is such that they are refusing permission for ships to dock. The crews cannot get off, and reliefs cannot fly in. So right now, at the moment, we're seeing that a major situation is developing within the Strait of Hormuz, that a lot of these vessels are simply running out of time to wait and cannot wait any longer, and there is no way for them to dock or be able to replenish stores or supplies. And from what we know, folks, there's really no tenders traveling around in the Persian Gulf either, and those are fairly rare these days. And this is something that's a little bit interesting, folks, is that there is a little bit of a workaround, and the ship that I'm talking about, which are called tenders, are these little vessels that used to historically exist that would bebop around, and they would go and drop off like food and provisions and fuel and such to other ships sometimes. But that was something from like the 19th century, and by the mid-1900s, you would really not see that around that much. These days, it's pretty much unheard of because of precision scheduling. Most ships really don't have tenders, and you'll see some tenders within fishing fleets, but not for these larger seafaring vessels like intermodal container ships or tankers, because they operate off the idea that they'll have enough provisions and fuel to be able to get them from port to port, and considering that the supply lines are almost always consistent, there won't really be a threat or a need to be able to have a tender nearby and help them restock and replenish. So a lot of these ships are currently finding themselves in absolute crisis at the moment, and it's not really looking all too well for their situation. We've also been able to see that the IRGC in the meantime has continued to announce that they will be keeping the blockade going. This video has music in it, so we can't play it, but they did continue to say that the strait is closed. They will not be allowing any passage. This has led to the United States working today, and I would have to say that with each passing day, we're seeing more and more concerted efforts to this degree of attempting to open the Strait of Hormuz. Currently, we're seeing that some islands within the area are of interest, but we're also seeing along the coast, in places like Bandar Linga, that there has been significant hits on the remainder of the Iranian Navy, including some of their fast attack boats, which are in this area. We can actually see the fires from the city to the port in this clip. We can also see in this clip as well the fire at the port. To show y'all really quickly what is probably on fire, we're believing that it's this area around right here that may have been on fire. There are some smaller Iranian vessels within this area. It looks like mostly ferries and such. And also further on up the coast, we can see right here what appears to be another large fleet of smaller fishing vessels. And mixed amongst them in here, if we look around particularly well enough, we might be able to find the little fast attack boats of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But one of these little port facilities near to Bandar Lenga were directly hit today and damaged by the United States Air Forces and the United States Naval Air Arm, and has seen that significant damage has been caused. We don't know exactly how many vessels have been sunk, but the damage was decent. We've also been able to see that strikes were also being conducted on Bandar Abbas as well, and we were able to see that more strikes had been conducted according to U.S. Central Command, with clips being shown right here, showing one of these vessels taking a direct hit midships.
Holy cow, that's a hell of a hit. Oh, wow. Oh. Also, by the way, yesterday, you remember yesterday, Israel went up to the Caspian Sea and just wiped out whatever Iran had lurking around up there. They just went and wiped out like 5 of their ships lurking in the Caspian. So I will say this, like, you got to admit, even though the Strait of Hormuz situation is complete bollocks right now, to say the least, the U.S. has done a fantastic job wiping out the Iranian Navy. Now, the drone boats, that's another situation. It's technically part of the Navy, but at least for the manned vessels of the Iranian Navy, the U.S. has done a good job wiping that out. Like, they've wiped out a ton of their vessels, to say the least. And also the land targets. I mean, Tehran, we're seeing missile sites. They're doing a good job when it comes to like overall like shock and awe when it comes to striking these very crucial components, on that front at least.
It certainly does appear that that's been the case. The Iranian Navy in both the Caspian and out here on the larger open sea near to the Persian Gulf have been taking some fairly significant losses. And we can see here the continued damage to the Iranian Navy, including this one that was on a trailer. I mean, you know, I guess the fishing day was canceled for Habibi in the group. But moving on from that, it does appear that the battle for the Strait is ongoing at the moment, as the LHDs and the LHAs are still on their way with their amphibious ready groups. Also, by the way, I saw someone in the chat say, and I found this one interesting, Grovist Ghost said, "You guys sound more obsessed with oil than the U.S. government, if that's even possible." I have to tell you that Very similar to a certain guy out there who says that he was attacked by demons in the night. About 2 weeks ago, I was actually attacked in my sleep by the spirit of Dick Cheney, and I was actually possessed by the spirit of Cheney. And so I am absolutely on that oil grind at this point. Everything is for the love of the oil game. The oil has to flow. So yes, you are absolutely correct. We are more obsessed with oil on this channel in the U.S. government because oil is basically the blood of our economy and our industry. And all jokes aside about the spirit of Cheney possessing me and everything, oil is incredibly important to the maintaining and function of our national economy and the global economy around the entirety of the world, if we're being entirely honest here. Back in the day before the oil industry became king, coal was king, and maintaining the flow of coal was an incredibly important thing worldwide. Nowadays, it's the flow of oil, and you cannot see that such a vital commodity as this, which is heavily understated and underplayed by a lot of people, is underplayed in actual strategic overview. If there is no oil, how do we move? Movement in the modern sense completely stops if the flow of oil stops. So for that reason, the oil must flow. There's really no other way to say it. If oil stops flowing, this world stops moving. And so we have to find a way to get the stuff flowing out of the Middle East and back into places like Europe, East Asia, and here in the United States to the amount that we imported, so that way we can keep everything running and make sure that everything doesn't come to a grinding stop. If it does, basically everybody's modern life, which is supported by the modern infrastructure and logistics that we have, will cease. Food will become incredibly expensive or very sparse to see. You'll also see that a large amount of your consumer goods will become incredibly expensive for a myriad of different reasons, because oil plays an incredibly important part in all of it. And that's why we're incredibly obsessed with it here on the channel, because as far as fighting and winning wars, logistics is the first step to everything. Blowing up a whole bunch of people sounds really cool, and it sounds like it's, achieving something in a war. But the reality of it is that you can literally obliterate the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran's military, and if they have completely stopped any drop of oil from being used here in the West, they might actually be able to see a chance at causing more damage to us than we are to them, which is the crazy thing about it, and that's why this is such an important focus. But moving on out of that, and on out of the Strait of Hormuz, we also got to see that Missile City is getting bombed heavily, and we were able to hear that the U.S. Air Force is conducting significant airstrikes on Missile City at the moment, and I would assume that they're probably trying to cave in the entrances to a lot of the tunnel complexes to greatly degrade the ability at which the Iranians are able to use this facility by the front entrances being obstructed due to foreign debris being within the entrance, i.e. a landslide. Moving on out of that little bit of news, it's now time for us to get on into some other news within the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this news is quite interesting today. We were able to confirm, and I want to make sure that before we even get into the story, we were able to confirm that an F-35 was hit today, but I have to say that there's a little bit of a confusion going around this thing, and I'd have to say that it is quite confusing. This was the statement by the spokesman of CENTCOM, Navy Captain Tim Hawkins. We are aware of reports that a U.S. F-35 aircraft conducted an emergency landing at a regional U.S. airbase after flying a combat mission over Iran. The aircraft landed safely, and the pilot is in stable condition. I don't know what that means. I mean, that sounds like he might have actually been injured to some extent. But this incident is under investigation. Apparently, CENTCOM officials declined to say whether the jet was hit by Iranian fire, but I'd have to generally assume that it probably was hit by Iranian fire. What other incident could happen? The Iranians didn't put out this video earlier.
Wait a second. Who posted this video right here? Read the name off?
This was the soul of the damned, Ali Khamenei, currently in hell.
It's Khamenei. That's the answer. It's Khamenei. This guy right here, this bastard's posting from the grave. I thought he was dead. Also, by the way, I thought the other guy, Laura Johnny, I thought he was also dead, but he also made another post today from the grave as well. So these bastards here are still haunting us even though they're dead. That's crazy work.
In other news, we have been able to hear that the Lord of Hell, Satan himself, has actually issued an eviction notice to Ali Khamenei for too many noise complaints that have come out because he's using Twitter, which is against the terms of service of the pits of hell. So he's about to be evicted from hell, and I guess he's going to go to, I don't know, the nether or the ether or something after this one, because I don't really know where you go once you get evicted from there. But we were able to see that he put out a video today, the dead one did, showing what appeared to be an F-35 that might have been hit by an air defense missile. We don't know if this video is even real, just to be frank with y'all, but here's the clip. When you see the F-35 flying largely in a straight line, and then right here at the end of the clip, it appears to get hit by a fairly violent explosion. And then they immediately put up the tag for the merch store for the dead devil, who's currently within hell. So,
oh my God! If this guy keeps running that loud mouth from hell, I think Satan's going to kick him out before it's over with. It's hard to tell if this video right here is authentic. Like, I tried to do some analysis on the video earlier today, and also I saw other people's opinions on it as well that are generally what you would call like video experts and things like that that can generally study stuff like this. I can't tell if it's fake. Like, I see some people saying, "Come on, guys, it's obviously fake." I mean, it's not that obviously fake. I mean, I'm not going to try to like sugarcoat it. It's not that fake. If it's a fake, it's a good fake. I will admit that. So I'm kind of on the fence about it, whether or not it's real or fake.
well, I mean, something that's a little interesting here, I got to kind of point this one out, is that this missile from the clip looks to almost have directly blown up on the F-35. I mean, if you look at that right there, I mean, the explosion was literally on the F-35. But what's interesting is that right before they cut the clip, you could see the F-35, and it appears to not be breaking up at all. I mean, that was a direct hit from the video, or at least what it showed. It almost looked like a direct hit in the video directly onto the F-35. And what's kind of wild is that once it comes out of the explosion cloud, it generally looks almost untouched, to be completely frank with y'all. So, and also another thing that I gotta say, folks, that's a little bit interesting here is that if the Iranians really did destroy an F-35, why did they cut the clip so quickly after it got hit? Like with the Ukrainians, for example, they would show an Su-30 get hit by air defense, and they would show the thing tumble into the water, the pilot eject, and the plane literally splash down into the water once it was hit and taken down. The Iranians cut this clip so quickly, you couldn't even assess really the damage that was caused to the aircraft if this was a real clip. So I'll be honest with y'all, it's kind of leading me to believe this might actually be a legitimate clip. And what we're watching here might be something that's a little bit interesting, because a lot of people don't know this about the F-35, but the F-35 has a neat little trick that it has up its sleeve that isn't really talked about a lot publicly, but some people would know about it if you have really deep, or really had a deep dive into the F-35. The F-35 has a little probe that's built into it that can be extended basically on a tow cable, is the best way to explain it. And this little probe can either hang out below the aircraft or behind the aircraft, basically being dragged behind it on the tow cable, and it emits electronic pulses that are actually able to confuse most air defense radars into detecting the F-35 either a little bit below the aircraft by a decent bit or a good bit behind the aircraft by several hundred feet. That would lead an air defense missile to actually explode underneath the aircraft or behind the aircraft instead of directly onto it, which would be a deadly and basically direct kill hit. That could have been what happened in this clip, is that probe was actually kind of hovering around below the aircraft on its tether, and the missile targeted the probe and exploded onto it instead of onto the aircraft, meaning that there would have been some minimal shrapnel damage possibly by the air defense hit, but it wouldn't have directly hit the F-35 and led to it breaking up. And that's also why, if you look at this clip right here, at the end, that aircraft still looks largely intact, and maybe it looks like it has a fuel leak coming out of one of the wings, but nothing else really. I mean, it doesn't even look like it's tumbling or that any major damage has been caused, which is even easy to see in these sorts of air defense videos that we've seen out of Ukraine and other countries.
Well, that would generally match up with what the officials, the U.S. forces, are saying. They're claiming that this thing made an emergency landing, so that would seem to match up. The Iranians are trying to claim that they shot it down. That's what the Iranians are trying to claim. If this video is real, and it is real, if that is true, that it is a real video, then this would seem to match up with the official account from the United States, if it is.
Yeah, that does seem to be so. And also, I see a lot of people saying there's no way that you could lock onto an F-35. There is a way. There is a way. And this is a way that you actually can't really fix, sadly. This is actually how the F-117 Nighthawk got shot down over Serbia way back in the day. When an F-35 opens up its bomb bay doors, it actually puts out a pretty significant radar cross-section, because those internal bomb bays are actually not stealth. And how stealth works is that you're trying to trick a radar, or at least deflect a radar pulse away to where it doesn't come back to its receiver, to get the idea that something's up there. So it's generally about geometry of the airframe, and also the geometry of the, I guess you could say, panels on board the aircraft, to where they don't directly reflect a radar pulse right back to a receiver and then detect something up there. That's also why, to go through a little bit of how stealth works. If you look at all of these panels on the F-35, notice how flat edges are a little bit rare. Most of them are jagged. The jagged edges actually create a geometrical surface that does not directly bounce radar pulses right back to a receiver on the ground and actually disperses them into the general air, making it a lot more difficult to get a large cross-section on an aircraft like this. Now, if the bomb bay door had opened at any point, they might have been able to get an actual lock on the F-35, and considering that they're conducting air-to-ground operations over Iran, that's very highly likely that that could have happened. And once they got that lock, we may have seen that a battery commander was able to keep a manual lock by basically keeping the air defense system physically on it even after it lost a radar lock to be able to try and guide in that air defense missile. That's exactly what happened to the only F-117 that was shot down over Serbia. The Serb army, or the Republic of Srpska's army, had actually been able to detect the F-117s taking off from Italy because of some people they had on the ground there waiting for those aircraft to take off. They communicated that to the Srpska air defense forces, and then those air defense forces were able to wait for the F-117 to come overhead, and they manually guided the missile in after it opened up its bomb bay doors onto the F-117, successfully hitting it and shooting it down. That's probably a pretty likely way of how they even got the missile near to the F-35, and even still, the probe might have saved it. So, we're not entirely sure about that. All of that's conjecture and speculation. Of course, I want to make that incredibly clear, but I also want to see what y'all are thinking about this, and whether y'all think that video is real, and what do y'all think really happened to the F-35. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so 49% said it sounds like a minor hit from this F-35 right here. It sounds like it got minorly damaged. It was able to land safely, and that was the end of the story. 19% said it sounds like it was shot down, and 17% said I'm 50-50 on this one. So I'm not totally sure about the video. Like, I see some people that are instantly saying it's a fake video, but the truth of the matter is this: nobody has any concrete information to say it's fake or real. Like, that nobody really knows. There's some things to me that looks kind of questionable on it, but at the same time, though, there's nothing that stands out so blatantly that makes anybody be able to say it's definitely a fake, at least in my personal opinion. If someone has anything to point out otherwise, I mean, I'd be happy to listen, but I'm not sure if there's anything that's that blatantly fake on the video. So to me, I would generally say that the report from the U.S. forces is probably the case. It was probably a minor hit to the aircraft, however it was hit. We don't even know if it was a machine gun fire. We don't know if it was a missile that hit it. The video appears to show a missile hitting it for the most part. So I think it was a minor hit, and I think they probably were able to recover the aircraft. But the question to me is this, though: they are not giving much information about the state of the fighter pilot himself. They're saying, I think, what was the exact words in the statement, by the way, that they made about the pilot?
Something along the lines of he's in stable condition, which might suggest he's wounded.
Yeah, and we don't even know if the pilot's actually wounded or not. So that's a crucial piece of information to let us know how bad that hit actually was. They won't even tell us that. They literally refused to comment on it. So that's kind of a questionable thing on that front as well. So I'm with the 49%. I think it is a minor hit, and I think that's pretty much the way it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I think it's a minor hit. Clearly, with the F-35 conducting an emergency landing and the pilot being stated to be in stable condition, it suggests that something did happen, and that video seems to be fairly realistic. It may be doctored, it may be faked, who knows, but it seems that it might be somewhat realistic, and that might suggest that the Iranians were able to try and get a fluke shot off on an F-35, and even still, it really didn't land, so the F-35 may be damaged, but still is operational to an extent, and we didn't see the complete loss of an F-35 over Iran, and also the ejection of a pilot. Also, another thing that I have to point out, folks, that would be showing up at this point while we're on air, is that if the aircraft was actually shot down over Iran, there would be a debris field that the Iranians would have filmed at this point to prove 100% undoubtedly that there was an F-35 shot down, and there also would highly likely be a surviving U.S. pilot that had ejected from that aircraft after it was hit, and they would most likely have already filmed and shown that pilot, because if the Iranians were able to successfully claim that they did shoot down that F-35 and there was absolutely verifiable proof that it was shot down and they were able to recover the pilot, then they would be showing that to high heaven. That would be the biggest propaganda victory that they would ever have. And the fact that they only showed that clip up to the point of the explosion, and then they cut it right after that, and that they haven't shown any proof since then, it's leading me to believe that they have not been able to successfully shoot down the F-35, and the damage was extremely minor. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I possibly can. And with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of the news that we have inside of Iran. But before we get into that and the rest of the news in the Middle East, I do want to say that we are massively appreciative of so many people who have been watching so far tonight. In the course of about an hour and 20 minutes, we have had a peak viewership of 27,500 people who have been here. And also about 153,000 people have watched the stream up until this point. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all enjoying this news every single night. And to thank y'all, we're going to take a moment to answer 3 questions from the chat before we get on into the rest of the news for the night. We still have a lot of major news to go from not only the Middle East, but everywhere else in the world. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first of 3 super chats here goes to Greg Budry, and thank you very much, Greg, for that $50 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And Greg said, Mojtaba has allegedly perished, and Delta Force will seize Karg, and the Marines will occupy Karg, Kish, and Kashem, and Iran will surrender, and NATO will occupy Hormuz permanently. Now, honestly, I'm not sure about Mojtaba. Like, I saw the reports, Greg, that Mojtaba is allegedly deceased. That's a preliminary report. We did know that he was apparently injured. In fact, he might have been even crippled in a strike as well. And there was even rumors he was in Moscow getting medical treatment. So it's possible that he might have perished, but I'm waiting on more confirmation of that. But it's possible that he's already taken out for the most part. Of course, he did pretty much have a timer on his life at this point because Israel said they're going after him. So, I wouldn't be surprised. We'll have to see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, in my opinion, I would believe that generally NATO wouldn't be conducting an occupation of the Strait of Hormuz because this isn't really a NATO thing, generally, and there's really no way to rope them in that way. But also I'd say that maybe the rest of it is possible. I don't know about Mojtaba being dead either, because, there's been reports, literally today, folks, I got on to some of my other accounts, i.e. my Facebook, to go look at model trains, and literally my entire feed, while I was trying to look around at that and get some ideas for my own layout, was, Netanyahu's dead! Yippee! And I was like, there's no literal proof of that. We can't find proof of that anywhere, and people are just running with everything. Everybody's dead, according to some folks out there. The president of the United States. Huh?
Netanyahu came out today and literally did a whole theatric about, I'm still alive, I'm witness proof right here. And so he came out with an official press conference.
My fellow Americans, I love Burger King. But beyond that, it's people are saying that the president of the United States is dead. People are saying Joe Rogan's dead. People are saying Putin's dead. People are saying that, Netanyahu's dead, Mojtaba's dead. Generally, I don't really work off that at all, because so many people say that everybody's dead all the time, 24/7. That none of it's almost ever true. It's like a 99.7% chance most of it's completely wrong. And we wait for official statements either by the U.S. government publicly announced, or by the Iranian government when they publicly announced, or someone else, that they're dead. And also before anyone says, well, they'd hide it. You cannot hide it. When a top leader dies, there's no way to hide that for long. They maybe can hide that for a day, maybe 2 days, but they eventually have to announce it, because here's the thing, folks. Everybody isn't going to pretend. Politicians, let's just say it that way. Politicians who are hungry power, morally depraved, starved individuals are now going to sit there and look at that empty spot that this corpse is now occupying and not try and take that. Someone's going to have to announce that the guy's dead, because everyone's going to have to start their battle to get to the top and become the king of the realm, basically. That's how it always works. Even when Stalin died, the Soviet Union didn't pretend like Stalin was alive for, months or years. It was literally within days they publicly announced that Stalin had died. And not only that, with Khomeini, it literally took them about 36 hours, which was kind of a little bit of a lengthy time, but, generally was them trying to confirm he was actually dead, because they didn't even know. And then they announced that he was dead because the power struggle to get to the top once again began. And so if Mojtaba died, we would either be hearing about that right now, or we'd be hearing about that tomorrow. And so far it seems like it's mostly a rumor. We know he's not in good medical shape, and he's in a coma, and he's had an amputation, and he also has other things going on with him. But generally,
they say he's flamboyant, Kathleen.
They say he's flamboyant, Kathleen.
It turns out the CIA said he's a flamboyant man, Kathleen. He's a singing man. He's a singing man.
They said, Kathleen, that the only reason he survived the airstrike is because he was hanging out somewhere in some smaller wardrobe room, something along the lines of a closet. Like, bless his soul, he wasn't in the room with Ali Khamenei. Because if he was, he would have been taken out with him. But they took him away, whisked him away, and into the hospital in Moscow. Beyond that, though, I would have to honestly say, I thank you massively for the support, but I do not think the Mushtaba is dead. I'm going to have to wait for an official statement on that to be able to say that with any defined certainty. So, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Wubba Rial, who put in a 25, and thank you very much, Wubba, for that support as well. He said a tax refund special.
And thank you so much for the support for the tax refund special. And we thank you greatly for that. Remember, everyone, it's tax season. Make sure to pay your taxes, lest the IRS will come and bother you. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of our news for the night.
All right. Also, by the way, folks, isn't it kind of interesting that out of all the stuff the CIA could have possibly done to try to subvert the Iranian government, they came out and said, well, it turns out that Mujtaba is a very flamboyant fellow. It's like, oh, I mean, it's like, that was an unexpected twist. It's like, I wasn't expecting this. This was an interesting twist. But anyways,
honestly, man, when they came out with that, like, my original reaction was, but what are we supposed to do with that information? It's like, how do we use that? It's like, but here's
you gotta remember though, it's the Middle East though. I mean, in the Middle East, that's a lot different. That type of news coming out like that than it coming out in the United States. That's a hell of a lot different.
Well, the thing is though, is they could just lie about that, because top leaders, they get an exception. Like, even for their religious norms, they get a pass. And then the Iranian government could just say, the infidels are lying and trying to deceive us. Do not be deceived by the misbeliever and all that stuff. And then people will just discredit that and then, work off. Because, for example, let's just say hypothetically, Matthew, that a whole bunch of people were doing these very questionable things on an island. And there's like a lot of irrefutable evidence out there in this hypothetical scenario that certain people who were very high up in, say, some government in some area of the world were probably down there doing something. Well, all it takes is just a couple of people coming out and saying that they weren't there and they didn't do that, and it's nothing but a bunch of lies by the enemy or so-and-so, whoever that is, and everyone will just immediately discredit that and not believe it. We've already seen that happen, right?
Yeah, maybe so, but I think the way it works generally is like even a rumor of something like that, even an allegation of that type of persuasion in an area that's very extreme, like the Middle East, because the regime is literally infamous actually for being extremely strict religiously with things like that. That's a big no-no right there in Iran. So that news coming out, even a rumor of it, could be devastating. It'll at least put in the minds of the people in Iran that are generally supporting the regime, it'll at least sow a doubt in their minds, which is dangerous in a country like that, and it could lead to problems later on down the road.
Maybe. It could. We'll generally have to see on that one. And with that, we are on to, I believe that was actually the last one, if I'm not mistaken.
We have one more to go, and this is the last one of the segment. This one goes to Crispy, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Crispy, as well, for that very generous support. He said, take one from the chat, and we shall, Crispy, and thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running as well. And the live chat question in honor of Crispy is going to go to Time, who said, do we have any stealth bombers currently in the region?
Well, we don't really know for sure. Technically we can operate out Diego Garcia, but due to the fact that we can't get satellite photography easily anymore, we don't know if the B-2s are down there. If they're anywhere, they're there. We do have B-1 Lancers at RAF Fairford, which is about the closest we can confirm that bombers are present in the Middle East. But generally, from what we know, most of our bombers are still operating out of Dice Air Force Base, Whiteman Air Force Base, and Shreveport Air Force Base here within the mainland of the United States, and then conducting incredibly long air ops to get over to Iran, drop standoff munitions or guided munitions onto their targets, and then they fly all the way back. And that's why those sorts of bombing campaigns by those larger strategic bombers are fairly lower tempo compared to the other sorts of tactical strikes we're seeing by the Air Forces that are based directly within the Middle East themselves. So I hope that does address that live chat the best we can. And a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the rest of our news. Moving us on up into Tehran, we were able to hear today that the Iranians have announced, according to the military spokesperson, who's this guy right here,
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Boy, that's something.
Oh,
Also,
wow. Only a face a mother could love.
Also, I love how they sat there and said, "We picked a new supreme leader, but we are not ever going to let anyone know who he is." And then they literally put Mujtaba right there, like in the portrait thing next to everyone. I mean, it's like, well, that's kind of on the nose, you know. It's like, it's like really wonder who it could be at this point. But beyond that, they stated that the Zionist regime is preparing a false flag operation intended to attack Aramco oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. Where in the world do they get this line of thinking, man? I've heard that the Israelis are trying to detain me at an airport. It's like, where in the world did they get that line of propaganda from right there?
Yeah, it's just the whole false flag thing. Is just like it happens. It does happen from time to time. But the way people make false flag attacks out to be, they make it out to be like it's something that happens every day. It's like that's usually a very rare maneuver, like by most countries. Like that's usually not something they do all the time. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. There's a whole bunch of psychological operations that go behind it to convince people that it was the enemy that did it. I mean, it's not just something they're doing every day.
Yeah, I mean, you have to really work into these things, and usually, it's not something that you can do on a daily because they take so much planning and so much time to be able to pull off properly. And everyone always goes, "Oh, false flag this, false flag that." Like, according to some folks out there, nothing actually ever happens. According to some people, crazily folks out there, the Middle East war isn't actually happening. Iran is just bombing itself all day, false flagging to make it look like the US and Israel are attacking when they're not. And then according to a whole other group of analysts, the Iranians aren't landing any damage on anyone. It's just the Israelis going around and bombing everybody in the region to make it look like there's something going on. I mean, it's like absolutely like clown world types of thinking when it comes to like everything being a false flag, and it's exceptionally rare. I mean, we've been covering this news around the world for 4 years, and maybe we've seen like one out of 4 years. Like that sort of thing is a unicorn. I mean, you're literally like looking all day, every day at every event, begging for something out of the hundreds of thousands of incidents that happen every year to happen, and it's never going to happen. It's highly unlikely. But moving on from that, we also were able to see the U.S. showed off a little facility, a garage, a surface-to-surface missile plant. I wonder what the plant looks like today. I think they're clocking out.
Oh man, what in the world they used to do this?
I don't know. But I have a feeling, Matthew, that a lot of people aren't going to be showing up for their shifts tomorrow at the factory.
Yeah, I tell you, that's a doozy there. It looks like a tornado hit it. It looks that bad.
Man, honestly, man, this looks worse than a tornado. It's like a tsunami and a tornado and then a hurricane. I mean, like, that thing is gone. It's completely gone. We also were able to see outside of Tehran and within the areas of northern Iraq that there were also some Kurdish commanders that were trying to get some support for the war. Here's one of them. Outside of the speech, which unfortunately I do not speak Kurdish for to be able to tell you all exactly what she's saying.
Wait a second. Enlarge that video again for a second. Also, by the way, interesting. A lady commander. That's an interesting touch. We also have here what appears to be an American rifle that's currently in her hands right there. And you said these are the Kurds, you say?
Oh, you mean an M4 carbine?
Yeah, that looks very, very new, and it looks very, very American.
Well, Matthew, don't you know? The Kurds are like the latest and greatest thing. We arm them everywhere in the region, from Syria to Iran, and then whenever we get kind of tired of them, we just let them get screwed over by whoever runs that other country.
That is interesting, isn't it? I must say right here. So this to me, it seems like this lady right here might be motivated because that looks like a brand new present right there that she has in her hands. In fact, I mean, look at even the magazine on that thing. Is that the like transparent window magazines that I'm seeing right there? Those are pretty new.
Shoot, man, that's one of the newest generations of PMags out there, my boy. Yeah,
it looks like they might have gotten a little something for the trouble. It looks like.
Man, I gotta say, and also, by the way, I see some people like, "What do you mean, Enforcer Matt? Woman?" Well, I mean, it's very interesting for the Middle East to have a woman in charge of anything. I mean, it's like, it's not America. You're not going to see, a lot of women girl bossing it out there, in like the Republic of Iraq's army. Like, that's not going to be happening. So it is quite odd, I'll have to admit, folks, to see a woman commander in charge of anything. That's actually exceptionally rare from what we've seen in the Middle East, for anybody for that matter, including the Kurds. But I also
Hey,
have
I
to
didn't
say,
say it was odd. I just said it was an interesting touch. I wasn't making any negative comments about it. I'm not sure how people interpreted it that way.
well, I mean, like I saw some people say, "What do you mean?" Like basically, like trying to insinuate they were saying that women are incapable. Women aren't incapable. It's just that it's due to the gender norms or whatever you want to call it over in the Middle East. This is highly rare, if not unheard of. So this is a little interesting to see. I'll be completely frank. But also, the equipment is very American, but I also have to say, Matthew, like it seems like an interesting sort of connection. But I mean, it's a connection that's for naught. The Kurds are literally supported head over heels by the U.S. Like basically everything that they have is American made. They use Humvees, they use Max Pros. Most of their equipment, like the actual small arms equipment, is American made and provided. So it's not really anything shocking to see that they have a lot of American equipment. But still, it's very interesting to see that they're still having to try and rally the Kurds in general, which are more so of a confederation than a centralized power, to try and start some sort of a ground offensive in Iran. And this video was largely trying to work towards that aim in this little speech that this commander made. But moving on from that, we also saw that there was a little goings on in Erbil. There were some explosions that have happened once again, apparently from a drone attack.
Oh man, Herbal, poor old Herbal. I'll tell you, they're getting hit all the time.
Man, I tell you, they really are. It's unfortunate. Oh, dang.
Oh,
Dang. I tell you. But moving on out of northern Iraq and those strikes, we also were able to hear that there were more explosions in Baghdad today. We didn't get any video evidence of them, but we largely would take that at face value. And now moving us on and into the area of the very western regions of the Middle East, we also were able to hear that the Charles de Gaulle Carrier Strike Group is currently northwest of Cyprus and is apparently hanging out in that area right now. And we also were able to confirm that the Iranians did land several hits inside of Israel today. There were direct impacts inside of Tel Aviv, which we saw in this clip right here. I don't know what type of missile that is. It looks like a firework almost.
oh,
That was kind of
it's a
underwhelming.
dud.
Like, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, bro, the way that thing sounded, I thought it was about to explode like, an actual missile. That was pretty much like a little firework.
Man, that's like that hood artillery. You know what I'm talking about? Like the what do they call those things? Like the fireworks shells or whatever like that. There's like I've seen like tons of videos out there. They'll like fire off like a janky or like a firework shell or something. It'll make a wrong turn and then it just goes like straight back toward the ground like a missile.
Ah, yes. The Scud missiles of the hood, the Skedos. I do understand what you're speaking. I do understand of what you speak, and it pretty much kind of was like that. It was a little weird. We also got to see, though, up in Haifa, the hits were not as light and not as favorable to the Israelis. The Haifa refinery was hit pretty heavily today. We could see some of the damage right there. And we can also see other clips of the hits in Haifa over the course of the day. Power outages are also gripping the city in the midst of the refinery fire, and we were also able to get these two additional clips as well of the explosions. There's one of them.
That's disturbing to see that, by the way. It's like, I wonder how so much stuff's getting through Israel's defenses still.
Well, it's just generally because, like, the truth be told, like we were saying, and I say this a lot, folks, it doesn't even matter what we're saying. It's not like people really pay attention in Israel or anywhere else in the world. But, missile-based air defenses don't count for everything. Like, gun-based air defenses are incredibly important for resource management. The Israelis had none of them. And so generally they've started to run out of missile interceptors. They're having to prioritize what to shoot down and what not to shoot down, or they just don't have ammunition to shoot things down with any longer. So a larger amount of the stuff is starting to make it through.
Yeah, it's disturbing to see. I even heard a German defense CEO today. He was speaking about the whole missile interception issue in the Middle East right now, and he was making the point that we've been making. Also, plenty of other people have been making this point as well about the whole situation of using these multi-million-dollar missiles that are very expensive, very labor-intensive, and also complex to shoot down. These like 20 grand drones that fly over, like from Iran, and there's still no real like major effort to move toward a defense that's cheaper than these multi-million-dollar missiles. Even he was saying that, and he's in the business of selling the missiles, and even he was admitting that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little interesting, I mean, literally, it's really crazy, folks, because like when when you get into our shoes, and I never really have understood this until we're finally in our shoes, what's crazy is that people can actually kind of like put out warning bells from the mountaintops, like, oh, well, we kind of do this as like a job, paying attention to this stuff. This is something to be concerned about. And basically, like, the whole public will just discredit them, and then when it happens later, they'll be absolutely shocked that happened. And it's like, I don't even understand how in the world that works. I mean, people are warning about the stuff in the best interest of our collective security, and then when people completely ignore it, and then we run out of air defense interceptors, and then we start getting hit, and then people go, oh, how's it happening? It's like, well, it's happening because of A, B, and C reasons that we laid out for quite a while. It's like, we've literally been saying for years, folks, that Western air defenses that are entirely missile-based in limited numbers of interceptors just cannot work in a modern air defense environment because mass saturation tactics are the order of the day. Drones can fly in the hundreds, and while they're incredibly slow and incredibly cheap and crudely made, you have to shoot them down. You just don't have that many air defense missiles to shoot down that many drones and do that every day, and there's no way to produce that many air defense missiles, so you need a cheaper and more efficient air defense system, which is always going to revert back to being a gun-based air defense system, and literally nobody in the world has listened to that for years in the West. Nobody in Europe has, nobody in America has, and everybody always wanted to say, and I find this hilarious because we were bringing this up, I think, at the latter part of last year, and there were some people here in the chat, oh, Enforcer, you don't know what you're talking about. We have all these laser-based air defense systems and all these electronic warfare-based air defense systems in the hundreds already, which didn't exist. And those are clearly going to completely moot any sort of threat by drones. And then, when it happened, they're not around because they don't exist, like we said. And, generally we're, up the creek without a paddle at this point on drone warfare, and also the amount of interceptors that we've had to fire. But moving us on out of the Middle East, it is time for us to move on over into the East Asian area. We've been able to see that today a little interesting development has happened along the Korean border. A little RC-135S Cobra ball flew along the area. This aircraft is used to track ballistic missiles and monitor launches in real time, suggesting that they're trying to gather some data on the North Koreans. Isn't that a little interesting? Here it is again.
Yeah, I wonder what's up with that. A Cobra hanging out around there. That's an interesting deployment. I saw people saying, several different analysts saying that this is sort of unusual for the most part to see this thing flying around like this around North Korea. So I would assume it's something that doesn't happen very often. So I wonder what they're expecting to happen.
I guess they're waiting for the North Koreans to fire off an IRBM, SRBM, or an ICBM. It's going to be some sort of a nuclear-capable missile, and maybe they got some intelligence that tipped them off that that's going to be happening at some point. So they've already begun to get the aircraft up and try and wait for whenever it's going to happen. Also, just across the shore from North Korea in China, it appears that there was a little incident that happened today. Apparently, confidential data from China's National Supercomputing Center in Tianjin was put up for sale, either accidentally or on purpose, we're not really sure. And this was some of the stuff that came out of it. This bomb.
What the hell?
What obviously appears to be an M142 HIMARS.
Oh man, honestly though, like, in all seriousness, like they're trying to do like physics simulations or something on it, like how it like reacts when it gets hit by a projectile. This is probably all that's necessary, but I will admit though, like they could have done a better job with like the textures on the thing. Like this is literally just a solid color on the panels.
And also, by the way, Matthew, we can't save the best for last. It has to be the last. The superstructure of a Nimitz class carrier.
Aha. This is actually some very, actually very critical stuff that they've had leak here. Like the amount of resources it takes to like generate models like those, especially very accurate ones that are being used for like defensive simulations, that is very time intensive and also very bad for OPSEC for that kind of stuff to leak out, obviously. So that's interesting. China didn't have very secure cyber systems apparently.
I got to say, that's a little interesting coming from a country that conducts basically endless cyber attacks, that for some reason they had a massive breach today. A little interesting with that. But moving on from China and East Asia, it's time for us to make our way to the United States of America. We were able to hear today, folks, I'd have to say, the words of common sense. While some people in the administration who are clearly wise and competent beyond all measure, former realtors and stuff like Witkoff, say that the Russians can be trusted at their word, we've been able to hear that the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, stated today openly that he wouldn't take Vladimir Putin at his word, And he confirmed that Iran is seeking intelligence from Russia and China to target U.S. forces, and Moscow may be providing data like satellite imagery to the Iranians to help them try and target and kill U.S. soldiers. So I gotta say, huge shout out to the CIA director. I mean, he's got a head on his shoulders and he's got a brain to work with. I mean, anyone could see that one. And I'm happy to see that someone up there is actually speaking honest truths about the Russians, that they're not nice people that like us. The Russian government hates us and wants us dead, and they're working towards that right now in Iran any way and shape that they can. We've also been able to hear in other statements today that there does appear to be a consideration of lifting those sanctions on Iran, which we covered a little bit earlier. And we also were able to see that the U.S. has once again reiterated today that apparently Israel is to cease attacks on Iranian oil and gas fields. Oh, who's that right there? Who's that?
That's not Lindsey Graham.
Oh, it isn't?
No, I don't think so.
I'm not gonna lie,
I think it's a lookalike.
Looks like a discount Lindsey Graham. I mean,
I don't think that's Lindsey Graham. At least, I mean, I can kind of. It's a pretty close replica, I will say.
I just wish we could listen to that person speak, because if we could hear them just say one word with an S letter in it, we would get a very clear indicator on whether that's Lindsey Graham or not. But anyways, moving on from that, we have also been able to hear that apparently, as I was iterating earlier, the U.S. is going to be putting troops on the ground, although we're sending every single group that could be put on the ground towards the Middle East at the moment. Moving us on out of the Americas, it's now time for us to move on over into Eastern Europe. It's time for us, folks, to move on over into the land of the war in Ukraine. And we were able to see that today the Russians have tried to step on the Estonians again. The Estonians have announced that another Russian aircraft has violated their airspace. On Wednesday, 18th of March, a Russian Su-30 fighter jet of a Russian origin entered the Estonian airspace near Vandlu Island without permission, remaining for approximately 1 minute. NATO Baltic air policing aircraft operated by the Italian Air Force conducted an identification flight in response. This is the aircraft in question. This is Su-30, larger aircraft, generally slightly multi-role, more so air superiority fighter, kind of cool-looking aircraft. In real life, not that great. Many shot down in Ukraine. Very sad. Many pilots break neck. Wham, wham, boo, boo. But they did fly one today over Estonia, and we do know that a lot like the poster here, Malcontent Newstead, strongly worded letter is incoming, and that truly make Russian tremble in pants. Shooting at Russian, no scary. Strong worded letter, very scary. Knees weak, palms sweaty, open up the door, mom's spaghetti. So that's what we're generally expecting, because that's how we work these days over here in the West. When they violate our airspace, we just give them a strongly worded letter. If this was, I gotta say this though, I don't mean to hype up Turkey, but if this was Turkey, they would shoot it down. Because the only time that a Russian aircraft ever flew into Turkey, it was an Su-24, and it was in their airspace for less than a minute. They blew that thing away, and I think they killed one of the pilots in the process of doing that. And the Russians never did that one again, because they learned from the one instance that happened that the Turks won't play, and they will shoot down the aircraft that enter their airspace. I wish that we would do something like that up there in the Baltics right now, because I know that the Russians are kind of wanting to find an excuse for a war, but the truth is, folks, is that they're not going to go into one, especially on something like that where it's clearly inside of our airspace. We'd be able to blow that thing away, and then they go, ooh, instead of trying to trample on their sovereignty and lose an aircraft every time we attempt it, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we shouldn't, and it would be a good idea, generally. I think that we ought to just start blasting them down out of the sky, because the Turkish example shows that they're not going to do anything about it, and if it's clearly over our airspace, well, they can get bent. What are they going to do about it? But moving on from that, we got to get on into Moscow, and it does appear that a lot of people are hearing about something a little interesting. I didn't put down a marker on it today because, we had a lot to cover, and it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but there was a little interesting story that came out today. Y'all remember all those Russian military bloggers that we were reading off their statements from yesterday, where they're like, Putin's an idiot, and, the Russian government has completely lost us the war, and we should put them up on trial for screwing over Russia and war crimes and all that? Well, one of them ended up today in a psychiatric facility, like literally overnight. Right after the statement was made, they went straight to psych ward. So a lot of people are wondering, what's up with that little fella? Is he all right? What's going to happen to him? Are they currently conducting a full frontal lobotomy? What's going on? Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so allegedly, according to reports, apparently the Russian government went and grabbed that guy who called for Putin's arrest on Telegram. They went and grabbed him and threw him into a van and basically whisked him away to a psychiatric facility. They put him in the nut house. They put him in the grippy socks, and he is not able to contact anybody, and they don't even really know where he's at in the psych ward. So the dude's just literally got nabbed off the street and thrown into the psych facility. I'm laughing. Honestly, it's kind of tragic, but it's just, I mean, what a situation. 72% said he's probably a goner. 18% said he'll go to the gulag or something. 6% 6% said he might reemerge different. Different. We don't know what that's going to look like, possibly, but maybe different. He might have a little treatment or something like that. We never can tell. But unfortunately, I think this guy might be a goner. Actually, I think they're going to do away with him for the most part. I mean, the guy called for Putin's arrest. I mean, that's about as extreme as it gets. So people have gone down for worse or for less actually inside of Russia, and this guy said he wants to arrest Putin. So I mean, I think the dude might be finished. They might do something to him, unfortunately, or do some bad things. I mean, they put Navalny with the dart frog poison. I mean, that was him in the gulag over there. So the odds of coming out unscathed is probably not good, unfortunately. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, blood's gone. Like he's not coming back out. He has Putin derangement syndrome, which is an identifiable mental illness in the Russian Federation, and they have decided to help him with that by removing his ability to think. Being thoughtless in Russia is good. Not thinking is great, and I think that guy is legitimately going to be going to generally disappearing here in the future, if that's a location to go to, because you don't get away with that kind of stuff in Russia. Free speech doesn't exist in a country like that. So he won't be around any longer.
Didn't they used to, like, back in during like the Soviet times, they used to go like grab people up off the street and they'd put them in psych wards and stuff like that, and they would like do stuff to them, like, well, wouldn't they give out like lobotomies and stuff like that to people that were yapping?
Sometimes they would. Generally, other times they just kind of intimidate people in the silence. They'd be like, "We're gonna beat the hell out of you," and then they'd be like, "Oh, okay," and then they'd stop, or they wouldn't stop, and then they get the hell beat out of them, and then they'd be like, "Okay, I quit." And then if that didn't work, then they just go and take them to prison or lobotomize them or something like that.
That's awful, really. Like some people are saying, "Why are you laughing?" I mean, it's so wild. I mean, it's laughable. But if you really think about it, it's really horrible. If you really think about it, I mean, the guy brought up good points. Like he said, Putin's clearly doing this for his own personal reasons, and the war in Ukraine's a failure, and Putin ought to be arrested for war crimes. I mean, fair statement. But I mean, obviously that wasn't going to end well inside of Russia. I think everybody knew that. So I just wasn't expecting they were going to put him in the psych ward. I wasn't expecting that. I was thinking like in maybe a week or two we were going to hear about like he fell down like a 12-story staircase or something like that, or maybe possibly the window treatment or the usual that usually the FSB carries out on people. But the psych ward, I'm not sure what they're going to do to him in there, but I have a feeling they might try to make an example out of this guy, like do something terrible to him so everybody else like sees what happened and they probably shut up. That might be what they're about to do.
What's crazy, folks, is that like technically the Soviets weren't actually the worst people when it came to like dealing with this kind of stuff. Crazily, it would actually be the Germans that were the worst in dealing with this during the Cold War, specifically the ones in East Germany, in the Stasi, because the FSB would legitimately just kind of tell you, "Hey, we're gonna knock your teeth out if you don't shut up," and that was basically most of what they do, and then they knock your teeth out if you didn't shut up. And then they go from there, but generally it's just like going to prison or maybe getting lobotomized, but that was like an extreme instance because, at that point you're basically, an invalid. You can't really do anything. But in East Germany, they were incredibly sadistic, if we could say that, about how they would do it. Like it's really crazy, folks, because they would start to build a profile on this person. They would figure out who their friends are, if they had a romantic interest. They would go, of course, find where they live, and they'd start doing interesting things that you wouldn't think of when you're trying to mess with these people. Like what they would do, the first thing they do, folks, is that every day this person would leave for work or leave to go somewhere because they get down their schedule, and generally their patterns. So they'd send Stasi agents into their house or wherever their apartment was, and they would slightly rearrange all of their furniture. Not enough that it was obvious, but enough that you would kind of notice that something isn't right every day. and it would start to mess with your sanity because you'd feel like you're not really connected with things around you. Then if you had a girlfriend, they would send a seducer, like a professional seducer from the Stasi, to go seduce your love interest and basically make them cheat on you if they can, to also try and screw with you that way. And then they'd insert one of the agents into your friend group to start turning your friends against you by basically making salacious lies about you, about who you are and what kind of stuff you've done. They would just basically start to try and mentally rip you down until you just went mad, basically. That's how the Stasi would deal with you. And I'll be honest with you, that actually seems more brutal than getting your teeth knocked out by the FSB or the KGB.
Yeah, honestly, that's tough right there. Also, by the way, it's like, I was just thinking, by the way, you remember when I was like really young and stuff like that, and I accidentally came across the elephant ear. Like, do you remember that whole thing?
Oh
With
my
all that
God,
stuff?
yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God. Also, by the way, if y'all obviously don't know what I'm talking about, but when I was really young, my mother had a plant called elephant ear planted in the backyard. So for whatever stupid reason, I took a small nip of it for whatever stupid reason. I think it looked like aloe vera or something like that. So I was stupid enough, young me, I took a little bit of a bite of it, not knowing what the hell it was. To say the least, that was something there I'll never forget for the rest of my life, to say the least. It was torturous. The skin basically went on fire. Felt like I was like burning from the inside out. Like a horrible thing, by the way. It's highly poisonous. Like if you have that, it's a very common plant, by the way. If you have kids, don't have that around your kids. Like whatever you do, that's a terrible plant to have around your kids. They might give the dude the elephant ear. I wouldn't wish that on nobody though. That's a tough one.
Actually, Matthew, we were watching, because when we were kids during that time, we were watching Bear Grylls, no joke, on like TV, and we were kind of like, Matthew was like really heavy into like the Survivor stuff at that point, and so the elephant ear was kind of cool looking because it was like exotic and kind of tropical looking, so he cut off one of the stalks and then he cut it up into some pieces. And he was like, I'm going to eat this because it's like a survival thing. And I was out there with him. When you see, I was like, I don't know about that, man. I was like something about that just doesn't seem like it's a good idea. And I don't know what inclination I had on that, because honestly, I don't even know why I said that. It was just like an lucky chance that I said that. And he was like, oh, come on, like have a taste of it at least. I was like, yeah, nah, I'm good. And so then he was like, well, I'm not going to eat it. I was like, I wouldn't eat that thing. Like, and he was like, I'm just gonna lick it. So he licked like the meat inside of the stalk of that thing, and he went, yeah. And I was like, are you good?
Bro,
He was like, dude,
the wordage, bro, damn, like Paul's damn.
well, dude, like that's what the inside of like a plant is. It's like there's the skin of the plant, and then there's the meat of the plant. But anyways, he said it tasted terrible, and then literally like within 30 minutes, he's like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm on fire!" And he was like he was recovering basically for the rest of the days after that.
Man, that was awful. I mean, a top tier stupidity, by the way. Very stupid, by the way. Like really stupid. Like I see people saying, "Man, that's like a Darwin Award." Honestly, like I was young, really young and stupid. That was really stupid, by the way. But I will say this though, that was an interesting experience. Like after I realized it wasn't going to take me out, I was like, I'm like, that is very fascinating experience right there. You just can't comprehend like the feeling of like feeling like you're burning from the inside out. Like that feeling is horrible. So I'm like, whoa, I'm like, that's crazy. That is crazy right there. I don't think that'll necessarily take a person out necessarily, but it'll definitely cause major issues, by the way. But it's wild that that's such a common plant. And like, obviously kids hang out around that plant, and that plant is actually very dangerous, very poisonous. It can cause skin irritation. It causes all kinds of horrible problems. So yeah, hopefully they're not going to give that to the guy.
Man, luckily, man, you didn't go, hey, you want to try like tasting this nightshade plant with me? At least you didn't do that, man. Like, it could have been worse. Nightshade, by the way, is like the literal deadliest plant that you can ingest. It's literally basically like cyanide almost.
Yeah, I know. It's awful. In fact, I think elephant ear might be a part of that family.
Really? Let me go pull it up. Elephant ear.
It's oxalic acid is what's in it. So if you happen to come across it or accidentally ingest it or something, you're ingesting oxalic acid, which is, I mean, obviously in the name, that's not obviously very good sounding. So you don't want to mess with that.
Let's see here. While rarely fatal, the severe swelling can lead to breathing issues, making them dangerous if ingested. Luckily, he didn't like eat it. Like he just kind of like I guess, like tasted the water coming out of it. Like that's basically what he did, and it was still bad at that. But still, it was a crazy thing, honestly. But I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because honestly, watching Matthew go through that, it was like being like in a prison run by the KGB, and they're like, that will happen to you too if you don't start talking. It's like, oh, it's like, no,
Man,
no,
I
please.
wonder what the dart frog. I wonder what the dart frog felt like. I wouldn't want to know.
Man, honestly. But moving on from that and on down into the area of Krasnodar Oblast, and specifically into the town of La Bubu, we were able to see that the Lubinsk oil depot has been burned to the ground. I mean, like, every single tank at the tank farm is burning to the ground. Look at that. The beauty of such a thing.
That's crazy right there. That whole thing's burning up. Oh, even more oil going down the drain right there.
Man, the president of the United States said, lift the sanctions and Russian oil. Zelenskyy said, lift the oil into the atmosphere by large fires. Like, hit it. And we can also see the before and after satellite imagery here. Very nice to see. Moving us on out of that, a little bit of news out inside of the Russian Federation. It's now time for us to get on into the war in Ukraine, and time for us to get into the clips. First, we were able to see another Ukrainian soldier surviving another FPV drone in a near miss. Here comes the FPV. They're currently trying to get away from it, and it hit right in front of him, and he's fine. Crazily enough, she completely survived.
That's crazy right there. Lucky dude.
Yeah, like basically without a scratch. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. So he hops in the car and they're out. Moving on from that. Also, by the way, Matthew, I've unfortunately just seen that I've gotten an email. It appears to be from PETA. And they have stated that your comments on eating an elephant ear is absolutely degrading to the existence of the African and Asian elephants, and that they demand that you cease and desist from further comments of such abuse.
I got an email from, I also, by the way, is joking, by the way.
Yeah, like, I'm kidding, by the way.
But I got an email from the Save the Matt Foundation that said, please keep Matt away from dangerous plants, especially when he's young, because he was really stupid when he was young. And, you know, obviously trying to be a survivalist is not really a wise thing for a youngin' to be engaging in, especially with deadly plants in the backyard. But honestly, I didn't even expect a deadly plant like that was hanging out in the backyard, to be honest. Like, I mean, I wasn't really thinking something that dangerous. Basically, cyanide was in the backyard. It's like, I was expecting that generally there wasn't anything like that back there. So, stupid kids. I guess I was a dumb one on the block.
Man, out of everything that you could have picked in that backyard, you literally passed over everything harmless and basically said, let's try the cyanide plant. I bet the cyanide plant tastes good this time of year. It's like, honestly, it was like, I don't even know what made him pick it, folks. I mean, like, it was like random chance that I think he picked that one. Because all the other plants in the backyard were like completely harmless, like, it's just, random stuff you'd find in Alabama. It's obviously not poison ivy and sumac and stuff, but, everything else that you would find. And he picked that one out of everything else.
I could at least get a spot in like the medical journal or something like that, because, there's obviously, it was obviously accidental. Like, obviously that wasn't intentional, but it's like, I could at least get a spot in the medical journal. I could attest to how it feels like it feels horrible. Like it generally, it's actually pretty bad.
I'm so lucky I didn't try it. Like, I didn't taste it or anything. I would have been messed up as well. But outside of that, folks, we were able to get the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours, and holy moly, they got a Bobcat.
We got one Bobcat skid steer. I love it.
And we were able to hear that Miss DC Keeper of the Record stated that Russian troop losses rise as spring weather means more effective drone attacks, and other categories are below recent averages. But there was one Bobcat skid steer, and for that, it's been a good day. Moving us on into that casualty report, we've been able to see that 1,520 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 4 APCs, 155 supply trucks, 32 artillery pieces, 1,391 drones, 3 MLRSs, and that Bobcat skid steer. All in all, not a bad day. Moving us on out of the casualty report, it's now time for us to move on down into the front lines. We were able to see in the Severoslavyansk direction, the 45th Artillery was serving up some high explosives today. Anybody feel hungry? Well, I hope so, because Ukrainians are bringing RPGs to the dinner table. Oh!
Oh, wow. Oh.
Oh, Brian.
Oh, wow. Da.
Oh, they got a Bohanka. Opa, bliati, soki. Oh, there goes an ATV and a wagon. That's the end of that clip. And moving on from that and on into our next one, further down the line in Konstantinivka, we also were able to get some footage of what the city currently looks like in the present day. We can see, of course, the city is mostly damaged and destroyed, but the Ukrainians are still holding the city. Generally, the outskirts leading to it more so, but the Russians have been bombarding the city heavily for really over the past 2 years, and the damage is really starting to show at this point. Moving on from that clip and out of the city of Konstantinivka, we also were able to see the Ukrainians were continuing to defend and repel Russian assaults within the Pokrovsk area, but we won't be able to show that one. Moving on down to the Zaporizhia front, we also were able to see the 110th Mechanized Brigade with that hard drum and bass have been hitting some drones. But before we show this whole clip, we actually have breaking news coming out. Matthew, please tell us, what is it?
Okay, so also, by the way, I have a little bit of news about the guy who just got put in the psych hospital, by the way. Apparently, it looks like we got a little bit more detail here. I'm reading a current report on it. They're saying he got admitted to the psych hospital known for treating patients showing psychotic symptoms of a deep nature. So apparently they put him in the real psych ward, like not just the light version, if that's such a thing, but they put him in the real one. Also, by the way, apparently there's a besieged member sleeping in a cardboard box?
Man, and they said we had a homelessness problem.
Damn, dude, look at that. I mean, that's crazy. That dude sleeping in a cardboard cutout.
This is what California... but beyond that, like... huh?
But also though, I do have like one other actual story of breaking news here. We have heard an update about the Cuba situation right now. Because remember, there's currently some Russian oil that's being sent to Cuba on tankers right now. There's about 2 tankers heading to Cuba. It looks like the Treasury Department just added Cuba to a list of countries restricted from taking delivery of Russian oil after those tankers started heading to the island, which is obviously under a U.S. naval blockade. So it looks like the U.S. is actually going to take a hardline stance on this, which is what we both predicted. So it looks like there will probably be a showdown about that if those tankers keep heading toward Cuba for the most part. That's the big breaking news.
And that is very interesting to hear. And we thank you massively, Matthew, for sharing that with us on air in the midst of our news. And moving us on back out of the breaking news into the 110th Brigade's actions in the Zaporizhia front, we saw them taking down a handsome number of Russian drones today. Take a look at that. I see a lot of people picking up on the joke. You know, that could be anywhere, USA, you know. They always say that other countries aren't like America, but I'd have to say that if the besieger on the streets sleeping like the homeless, well, I think many other countries are worse off than us. I don't see anyone in the army doing that.
Well, you know, sadly, it does happen these days, actually.
Well, not currently serving in the army.
Yeah, but like veterans and stuff like that, it does happen.
Well, yeah, but I mean, not currently serving. You're not going to see a U.S. Army soldier that's currently, you know, serving a contract, and you know they work at, say, like Fort Carson, and they're sleeping on the streets in Colorado Springs. You know, like you're not going to be seeing that. Like veterans, sure, and generally veterans in every country, of course, but you know, actively serving at a checkpoint and sleeping on a park bench covered in cardboard. I mean, you know, that's a new low right there. I mean, you don't really see that often, or commonly for that matter. But with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move out of that footage from the war in Ukraine, and time for us to go and check on something really quickly, because I checked on this before the stream, and I'm wondering, did they upload one today? Did the Office of the President of Ukraine upload a little speech today? And I'm trying to pull that up on the second screen right now and find out if they did or if they didn't. And they did! Oh my goodness, they did upload one, and it's 6 minutes long. Without further ado, here's the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Peach! Peach!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні вже в Києві були насичені візити в Британію та Іспанію. Є у нас нові оборонні домовленості. Це стосується як виробництва зброї, так і підтримки для усього нашого суспільства. Ми представили партнерам також спроможності, які у нас є, щоб спільний захист, спільні дії могли стати сильніше. Продовжуємо цю роботу. І відчувається, що потреба в координації зусиль та в об'єднанні потенціалів зараз більше, ніж будь-коли. Зараз весь світ слідкує за ситуацією на Близькому Сході та в регіону Затоки. Постійні удари іранського режиму по сусідах значно дестабілізують ринки, дуже важливі лінії постачання енергоресурсів. Зараз багато хто у світі говорить і про захист енергооб'єктів, і про неприпустимість енерготерору проти людей, та цілих країн, і про безпеку на морі, вільне мореплавство та безпечні торговельні шляхи. Все це дійсно глобальний інтерес, і зараз слухаєш такі численні заяви з різних країн, багато в чому це фактично вони повторюють те, що Україна говорила ще у 22-23 роках про російські агресивні кроки, про морську блокаду наших портів, про російські намагання позбавити нас доступу до глобальної торгівлі. Росія ж роками робить з нашою енергетикою те саме, що іранський режим тепер з інфраструктурою в своєму регіоні. Іншого мотиву такої цілеспрямованої агресії проти енергетики, як російські удари проти наших електростанцій, проти нашого видобутку газу, і як удари зараз іранського режиму по всім, хто навколо нього, іншого мотиву в цих ударах не може бути, ніж щоб народи страждали. І тому так важливо, щоб глобальна співпраця хоча б зараз змогла дати реальні безпекові відповіді. Відповіді для всіх, для Європи також. Удари залишків іранського режиму по Катару, по Саудівській Аравії, по Еміратах та інших країнах – це удари фактично по глобальній стабільності, по європейській енергетичній безпеці. Україна готова долучатись до спільних безпекових ініціатив, щоб якнайшвидше стабілізувати ситуацію. Україна давно пропонує створити реалістичні та дієві інструменти, щоб можна було ставити на місце тих, хто блокує морські торговельні шляхи, хто просто знищує нормальне судноплавство, знищує енергетичну інфраструктуру. Україна пройшла цю зиму через російські удари. Близький Схід та регіон Затоки зіткнулись фактично з таким ж злом. Росія та іранський режим недаремно допомагають одне одному. Треба зупиняти їх. Це відповідальність кожного лідера. Забезпечити реальну стабільність, гарантувати безпеку. Ми всі разом точно сильніші. За цей тиждень Рустем Умєров був в ключових столицях регіону Затоки і сьогодні вже доповідав по результатах. Поки що в телефонному режимі. Завтра буде більш предметна доповідь онлайн. Є розуміння, які нові безпекові домовленості можуть бути з країнами в цьому регіоні. Є конкретні речі, якими вони можуть підтримати нас, Україну, підтримати наш захист, передусім це ППО. Є те, в чому ми можемо підтримати їх і вже підтримуємо. Українські групи експертів для захисту від шахедів вже в відповідних країнах. Щоденно є доповіді по їхньому виконанню завдань. Важливо також, що є сигнали від американської сторони щодо готовності продовжити роботу в наявних форматах перемовин для закінчення війни Росії проти України. Переговорна пауза була, час її завершувати, і ми робимо все, щоб перемовини були дійсно змістовними. Українська команда, саме політична частина переговорної групи, вже в дорозі на цю суботу. Ми очікуємо зустрічі в Сполучених Штатах Америки. Сьогодні ми детально говорили щодо перемовин і з Умєровим, і з Кирилом Будановим, і з Давидом Арахамією. Також в зустрічах братиме участь Сергій Кислиця. Наш пріоритет – зробити все для можливості достойного миру. Я дякую всім, хто із цим допомагає. Ще кілька речей. Я взяв участь у засіданні Європейської ради. Головні речі цілком зрозумілі та справедливі. Європа вже ухвалила рішення щодо гарантій фінансової стійкості. Це пакет у 90 мільярдів євро для України на 2 роки. І ми сподіваємося, що це рішення Європи буде реалізовано. Україна в комунікації щодо цього з представниками Європейського Союзу. Це важливо також для нашої підготовки вже до наступної зими. Сьогодні був на доповіді міністр енергетики Денис Шмигаль і по ситуації в енергосистемі, і по заходах, які потрібно нам зробити. Плани стійкості для наших українських регіонів всі затверджені. Кожен розуміє, що потрібно. Відповідальність і на урядовому рівні, на рівні областей та громад дуже висока. Сьогодні також ми говорили з прем'єр-міністром України Юлією Свириденко та міністром фінансів Сергієм Марченком по фінансовому забезпеченню, зокрема підготовки до зими. Але це все залежить не тільки від українців. Ми цілком справедливо розраховуємо, що Європа буде з нами та знайде спосіб виконати те, що уже узгоджено. Я дякую кожному лідеру, який з нами у таких питаннях, бо це питання захисту життя наших людей, захисту нормальності. Дякую вам. Слава Україні!
And
Rom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And it's time for us to move on and into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to every single one of you. And it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to talk to all of you all after this news. I do have to say that we are massively appreciative of the 200,000 people who have watched this news over the course of this stream, and the peak viewership tonight of 27.5 thousand people who have watched the show. I have to say that it's crazy to see that we are consistently hitting around the area of the top 15 and top 20 every day in America. We are absolutely blown away and humbled by this, and we thank you all greatly.
Man. This is a stream of the people, kind of like Zelenskyy. You know how Zelenskyy was in Man of the People. You remember that whole
Servant
thing
of
right
the
there? He
people.
was, yeah. Oh, that's right. The servant of the people. It was something of the people. The servant of the people. The leader of the people. The stream of the people. Something of the people. Like it's for the people.
It's for the people, of course. And I have to say that we're entirely honored that so many of y'all have been here with us tonight and have really enjoyed the show. And we thank you all so much once again for enjoying another night of news with us. We hope that it's been a fairly informative night, giving y'all a good idea of the major things that are going on around the world. And I hope that y'all also enjoyed our analysis as well and a little bit of our jokes and stuff that we've thrown in between. But with that in mind, in all seriousness, we are going to be moving on to the question segment at this point where we're going to be talking about literally anything and everything. The news is over. If you were coming in right now and you're going, oh, yippee, I get to watch the news. Too late. You have to rewind, sadly. From this point on, we're not going to be talking about any real ongoing news live. It might happen. Like, if there's breaking news, we might bring it up for a little bit, but it's not going to be a lot of it. And we're going to be getting to talk to y'all instead, which is a blast. We get to talk about all kinds of stuff. Like, for example, this one guy in the chat who asked, how tall are y'all? And that's a great question. Matthew is actually 7'8". He's one of the tallest people alive.
No, 7'2". Back in the day, I remember this clearly. They were like, we're going to draft you for the basketball routine. Like, you got to get in here and do this basketball. Like, you can get millions doing it. So I was like, nah, I'm going to turn it down. I turned it down.
In reality, folks, I remember that the football coaches, Matthew, if you remember, they always go, you're 6'2" and you ain't running football? It's like, no, I don't want concussions. I'm good. Like, it's like, I don't want to get messed up by some kid who has like daddy issues on the field. It's going to slam you into the ground and break your like legs and your ACL and everything. He's like, I'm honestly fine.
It was either between the basketball scholarship or doing NASCAR. That was the other thing too. But I turned them both down. I said, nah, I'm good.
But in reality, folks, the truth is that we're actually both the same height. We're actually, I think, like I don't really know what it is. Like on my license, it actually says that I'm 6'3", but I think in honesty, I'm actually like 6'2". I think they mismeasured at the DMV when I originally got my license, and that's never been changed since. But I'm about 6'2", and Matthew's actually 6'2" as well. So we're kind of on up there. But to be entirely honest with y'all, folks, 6'2", like. It's kind of tall, but it's not really that tall because, I mean, it was just the other day that we were out and about, Matthew, remember, and there was that freaking, like, space marine giant who was, like, 7 foot tall that walked by us that was about our age. I was like, damn. I was like, what in the hell did they feed him when he was growing up? Like, that kid's like a mutant, basically. Like, he's like Friedrich Merz.
Also, the president's son, Barron, that kid is like massively tall. Like, that kid is like almost like tall as like the doors of like the White House. Like, it's crazy. Like, I'm not sure what his actual height is, but that kid is tall.
I think he has like that Marfan syndrome or something, if I remember correctly. Like the thing that makes you tall, like it's a genetic defect sort of a thing. I think Lincoln had that actually.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that. I just know he's tall.
Yeah, I know he's tall. I think there was like a medical explanation. Let me go pull that up. I want to see if that's true. Let's see. More. Let's see. Let me see if I can find this. Let's see here. So no such condition has been verified, but there's a lot of people out there who speculate that it probably is Marfan syndrome. Because let's see here, he's 6'9", or 6'7", somewhere in that range. I mean, that's pretty damn tall. And Lincoln was about that height as well. And Lincoln actually had Marfan syndrome, I think, from what they know now. And if y'all don't know, Marfan syndrome is the sort of a genetic defect that actually leads your body to actually just grow taller, like exceptionally tall to those sorts of heights, really for no real reason, which is really interesting. And that's why, Lincoln always looked exceptionally tall. And with the fashion of the time, with the stovepipe hats, he looked unbelievably tall. He was like 7 foot or so with the hat on. So he was like freakishly tall to most people. But anyways, oh no. So it's at 6'7". Oh no! Oh no! I didn't even realize it! But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat here of our last segment of the questions, and then getting our live chat questions out of the super chats. This one goes to Lost, and thank you, Lost, for that $20 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, "What do you know about U.S. Helios or Odin laser tech, or Israeli Iron Beam, or AI-enhanced Space Force satellite tech to detect ground launch systems within minutes? And do you think any of them will provide any advantage?"
So the firm satellite is what you're generally talking about with detecting missile launches. And that system's been around for a little bit. But generally it doesn't pick it up within minutes. It generally picks it up almost within seconds for the larger part and can report that directly back to a reporting facility that's at Patufic Space Force in Greenland, and then that will be forwarded generally to Space Force HQ, which is in Colorado Springs, and then that gets bounced to the Pentagon. And then from there, they're able to work with that information and provide to the president. So it has this little communications loop that it has to go through to get to the president. In reality, that communications loop would take a couple of minutes to see that happen, but the satellites can actually detect the launches almost instantaneously. As far as the other part, the directed energy weapons are good, but they're not around in large numbers, and it's going to take a while to be able to produce them. And there is where the problem lies. And we've been talking about that for years, and that's great to have those sorts of weapons coming down the pipe, but they're not here right now. We need a stopgap at the moment for the here and now, which means that you would have to find those gun-based air defense systems like they have in Ukraine and start fielding those in large numbers. That's really the only way that we can go forward at the moment, because I have to say the directed energy weapons are great, and they are certainly going to be the air defense of the future. But the future isn't here yet. The future is going to be here in a couple of years, and no matter how cool and great those systems are, we need something that works right now, and gun-based air defense systems work right now, as we've seen in Ukraine. And so a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one. And a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running.
Indeed. And our next one here goes to Free Software Channel, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Free Software Channel, for that support. He said, "The U.S. Marine Corps Infantry Afghanistan combat vet here. And I did training on LCACs on the USS Mesa Verde on the 22nd MEU in 2011. And I promise you, these men are ready to die for the country, victory or death. And God bless the United States."
And I thank you so much for the support. And I got to say that that's very interesting to hear that you served and have trained on an LCAC. And I would generally assume that the Marines are very motivated and dedicated. They usually always are. And I would hope that they would see that they would be able to achieve success, because the alternative is defeat, and defeat usually comes at a pretty high price. So I do thank you tremendously for that support and help with this channel to keep it running. And I hope that things do go well for them. Here's one of the LCACs right here. And it has a speed limit of 55, apparently.
I've heard those things are really like a pain in the ass to work on. Like they're always like having problems. At least that's what I've heard. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
I think it's true, actually, from what I've also heard. Like, people have been like, these things are really a bitch. And I've heard that a lot of people have been trying to phase these things out and replace them with something else. But they're still around right now. They're still around, actually. So, we'll have to see how they perform. But, pretty interesting little system. A little bit overcomplicated, honestly. The Russians, folks, actually have a larger version of these things. Let me go see if I can pull up. Let's see. Let me see here if I can show you one of these. This is the Zuber class LCACs, which, I'm not going to lie, these things get into absurdity because they don't really move anything to shore, from what I know. That is pretty significant. It's basically just a little troop carrier for the larger part. He can carry some very light BMPs and some BRDMs, but anything outside of that, it's just unheard of. Like, let me see here. Maybe they can tell you what it can carry. Let's see here.
Somebody said, why does it have speed limit signs on it? Well, Marines are driving it. That's what they got speed limit signs on it. I'm sure they're gonna throttle that thing up to the max. They're probably gonna start skidding that thing and drifting if they could. They got to put the speed limit on there.
Oh, wait a minute, hang on, folks. This thing can carry 3 main battle tanks, apparently, or 10 APCs with 230 troops, or 8 APCs of a total mass of up to 115 tons, or 8 amphibious tanks, or up to 500 troops. So it is a bigger version of the LCAC, but the problem with this thing is, though, it's like, how do you get this thing to go at a distance? Like, how do you get it out there at a good significant range away from Russia? And I think that's where the problem lies, because this thing has a range of 300 nautical miles. So who the hell are they landing on the shore of that's only going to be 300 nautical miles away, Like, this thing can only be used against people that are directly on Russia's borders, and LCAC can get carried in a larger ship because it's not exceptionally, unbelievably humongous, and we can bring that thing all the way to Iran. Russia would never have a hope in hell of even getting this thing really far away from Russia's coast, actually. So it's almost like a coastal patrol vessel, really. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Coca-Cola Mandate. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. He said, number 1, unsanctioned Iranian oil. Number 2, take over Iranian oil. Number 3, sell unsanctioned Iranian oil and collect the money. And 4, promise to give the money to Iranian people through a new government.
Well, you don't have to unsanction the Iranian oil to where we could sell it if we took it over. Like, it's not Iranian oil at that point; it's our oil because we're in control of it. It's Iranian. Iranian oil is sanctioned as Iranian oil, as in the Iranian government is operating an oil loading port that the oil is loaded onto a ship from and then sold overseas, where the money goes back to Iran. That's what it's sanctioning. I think there might be a little bit of a misconception there, like people had with the whole, let's rename the Gulf of America to the Gulf of America so that way we can build more oil rigs down there, because currently we can't because it's not named properly, kind of a thing. Because you don't have to unsanction Iranian oil to sell oil off of Karg Island while the sanctions are still in place, if that's what you're saying. So I do think...
You sound kind of commie to me. You said this is our oil.
Yes, comrade. It is national oil.
This isn't your oil. This is our oil.
Man, how do you... Let's see. Oil in Russian. How do you say that? Это наше масло, блин.
Wait, is that how you say it?
Yeah, масло.
Damn, that really made it complicated. I would rather say oil.
Масло.
Okay.
Masla.
Man, oh, wait a minute. That's like oil. That's like vegetable oil and shit. So the other one is...
Oh, no Diddy.
The other one is...
Keep the masla away from Didi.
Нефть.
So, oh my... Neft. It just hit me, Matthew. Rosneft, it means literally Russian oil in Russian. Just hit me then when I just saw that neft. So это наша нефть, блин. Like, that's how you say this is our oil, damn it, basically. So I would say that's what we're working off of.
I guess so. Oh.
Man, bro, man, the ghost of Cheney's past is behind me right now going, good, that's good. Now take your best friend on a hunting expedition and accidentally have a discharge of the shotgun. Like, it's like, no, it's like, but beyond that, big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. A big thanks to you once again for making this thing possible and helping to keep on running. But you don't have to unsanction the Iranian oil for us to sell it if we take possession of it. At that point, it's American oil because we're the one actually selling the oil and handling it at that point. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Crispy yet again, and thank you very much, Crispy, for the second support of the night. We do appreciate that. He said, take another one from the chat, and we will get another one. We will get one right now. And thank you very much, Crispy, for that support. And this one goes to The Bearded. He said, why does this sound like Russia is the one pulling the strings inside of Iran?
Oh, that's what you think? Do you think they're pulling the strings inside of Iran? Why does it look like that? I actually don't see that, actually, to be entirely honest with you. It looks like the Iranians are kind of doing what they want. Because the
You
Russians,
don't?
no, I don't really see that. Like, as far as pulling the strings in Iran, I mean, Iran's kind of doing what they're doing. Like, Russia's helping them to an extent. But, it's kind of like saying the U.S. is pulling the strings in Ukraine. Like, Ukraine would still be fighting this war whether America's there or not. And America really isn't even there for them right now, and they're still going at it.
I would say, like, I'm not sure if it's as deep as necessarily like pulling the strings as if they're like the puppet masters behind this whole situation, but they certainly are driving it. I can say that for a fact because just imagine this. The oil price is skyrocketing. That's a windfall for Putin, to say the least. Also, by the way, this entire Iran war situation caused the United States to lift the sanctions on Russian oil for the large part, for all the stuff that's out at sea right now. Another windfall. So, I mean, Russia's getting rich off of this right here. So, Russia, in fact, this is giving Russia every incentive in the world to make sure Iran can keep this war going. So that way they can keep getting a windfall from it, which is honestly a horrific thing. That's why we shouldn't have unsanctioned Russian oil, because that literally gave Russia an incentive to keep Iran in the war, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. So it's just like, I mean, oh my God, it's bad.
I mean, it kind of worked in Russia's favor, but I don't really think they ever even forecasted that could probably happen. Like, they probably thought that was like a crapshoot chance. Like, at least in my opinion, is like, even it being in Russia, like, who in the hell would ever expect that the U.S. would just out of the blue start lifting the sanctions just because of our mess up in the Middle East to some extent?
You never know.
Does the special envoy have anything to say about that? Can we get him up on a congressional inquiry at this point, and ask him about that, but anyways, beyond that, I would have to say, I mean, maybe, but I don't really think they're pulling the strings, like, per se, like, basically running the whole show with Iran being its puppet. Iran's mostly doing what it would have done, but Russia is helping them out to an extent, and is kind of trying to look for its own aims down there, like trying to weaken the United States and stuff like that, because that's always how it works. But I wouldn't say that they're pulling the strings necessarily. I feel like that might be a little bit too much to say about the Russians, because the Russians can hardly even pull the strings on trying to fight the war in Ukraine, and they're the only one involved in fighting Ukraine at the moment. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Peter Burrow, also known as Flash1, and thank you very much, Flash1, for that $20 support, and we appreciate that very much as well. He said, "Hello, Enforcer Matt and Enforcer. Great to be here today. You both keep turning up and doing a brilliant job reporting on world issues. And who would have thought we would still be here after 4 years plus? LSA and Flash1 out."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Flash One, and thank you for the kind words. We are dedicated to this grind. I wish y'all could have known what we did on Monday and Tuesday before we came back to the stream, to these shows, because it was a lot that we had to do. It was a lot that we did. We basically got no sleep. We woke up on Sunday, and I think all the way up until the point that we ran that stream on Tuesday, I maybe got 3 hours or 4 hours of sleep during that whole period of time. It was basically no sleep at all. And it was exhausting, but we were happy to keep on this grind because, as we say it, until the bell rings, the fight isn't over. And as far as I'm really concerned, as long as we're all alive, the fight's never over and the bell hasn't rung. So you just got to keep at it and keep going at it. That's what we like to do here. And I'm glad to know that a lot of people really appreciate our dedication to this and really enjoy helping this channel to keep on running as well, like you do, Flash One. So humongous thanks to you for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
Also, real quick, by the way, I saw someone mention this just a second ago. Has anybody else seen all the reports? Have you seen it as well, Andrew, about all these meteors and stuff like that are being caught on camera all of a sudden? Like, have you noticed that, like, this massive uptick in meteor sightings and stuff?
I haven't actually.
Yeah, it's like there's like a whole bunch of like meteors and stuff. There was some like meteor sighting here in America. There was one in Europe. There was one somewhere, I think, over the Middle East. It's weird how there's like so many meteor sightings. I saw someone mention that a second ago. You know, I'm not saying it's anything more than a meteor, but it is a bit weird though that it's like all this different stuff happening. Someone said it. LJ Jada said Ohio. Yeah, I think that was where one of them was at right there. It seems weird. Like I don't really hear of a whole bunch of meteors. And in fact, there was one here in Salt Lake City, just like I think 2 weeks ago, that was going through the sky as well. Yeah, there was a meteor here that came over as well. I'm not really sure how common it is for meteors to be flying over like that. I thought it was something that wasn't that common.
Well, let's pull that up. Let's see. How common are meteors? Let's see. Meteors are incredibly common, with thousands of fireballs entering the atmosphere daily, though most go unnoticed over
Huh.
oceans or during the day. Roughly 48.5 tons of meteoric material hits Earth daily. So that's about the weight of really heavily kitted out like T-90 hitting the Earth every day in terms of the amount of meteor material. Dust-sized meteors are constant, brighter fireballs are less frequent. So also, by the
These are
way,
bright. These are very bright, by the way. They almost look like missiles, like the way they're so bright.
you know, actually, let me go pull up like a. Let's see here. Let me see if I can show this to y'all. Because something that's a little bit interesting is that the little speck of dust, like the dust-sized meteors, which like are a little bit bigger than dust, they actually produce some fairly significant trails. Like they actually are a little bit sizable. Basically, anything entering Earth's atmosphere is visible as long as it's in the right place at the right time. And apparently, they're fairly common. I was kind of thinking that they were, and I wasn't going to say that off of the bat. I was like, I have to look into that to make sure. But from what I knew, meteors are fairly common. It's just that spotting one is a little bit more difficult. And maybe a lot of people are just looking up at the sky a lot more lately and, are just catching them. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's a fluke that they're kind of showing up where people are looking at or cameras at or something. I don't really know. But that's interesting to
Well,
hear, though.
also, by the way, I think a satellite, if a satellite like re-enters the lower atmosphere, I think it also burns up and looks like a comet burning up in the atmosphere or a meteor or something like that. I think it generally has the same appearance to it. So I saw some people saying that maybe it was a bunch of satellites, re-entering the atmosphere and burning up, and that's maybe what this was about. These common, frequent, major sightings.
Well, they actually have a bit of a distinct profile because they actually break up into pieces because they don't have the kind of structural integrity that a rock would have or, something like that that's a lot more dense and a lot more compact. So they generally get ripped apart and they create like this kind of like trail of like glitter almost in the sky. So they're a little bit distinct. Another one thing though that doesn't give off a trail like that would be like in a re-entering capsule because it's a larger solid object with a heat shield, so it actually kind of does look a little bit kind of like a meteor, but a good bit smaller as well. It's not like an actual meteor, but it's still visible to some extent. But that's just really interesting here. I haven't been paying attention to that kind of stuff. It's been
Yeah.
completely passing over my radar completely.
Well, also there was actually a meteor over Turkey. Actually, you might remember that one. Remember, we
Oh
almost mistook
yeah.
it for an Iranian missile, actually, but it turned out it was a meteor. A very odd timing with that, by the way. It's literally a meteor that looks almost identical to an Iranian missile flying over, but it wasn't. That one time, it was actually a meteor flying over Turkey in the midst of the war going on. So, it's got the speculation obviously running off the charts. Like some people are going as far as to like create a whole conspiracy theory out of it. They're saying it's actually Iran firing missiles at the United States, but they're keeping it quiet so that way people don't go crazy. It's like, nah, it's not, trust me, it's not that happening. And also, by the way, it wouldn't just burn up. You would see an interception if the U.S. shot it down. And there's clearly no interceptions. It's just fizzing out like a meteor would.
Yeah, that's really interesting, honestly. And I see a lot of people talking about what's the difference between a meteor and a comet. The one thing that I know about meteors is that a meteor is some sort of an object, like a solid object that's entering the atmosphere. That's generally what will qualify as meteor. And I know that comets generally do not enter Earth's atmosphere and generally just pass by and are pretty much orbiting on their own orbit inside of the solar system. And so they show up a little bit. I think the most famous one would be Halley's Comet, which shows up pretty infrequently. Like it's a very long amount of time between the sightings for Halley's Comet. But beyond that, that's generally all I would know about the difference between a comet and a meteor, just speaking from my own knowledge. But still, the stuff is really interesting, I've actually heard, folks, that they're thinking about possibly trying to mine like materials and raw resources off of comets out there someday in the future. I don't know if that's economically viable, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I got to get the people back to the moon first. I got to try to pull that off right there. They're having a hard time with that. They're having to delay it over and over and over. But anyways, though, I'm moving off to space talk right here. Moving back into our super chats. This one goes to Waka Waka What, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Waka, for that 20. They said the Pentagon requested $200 billion for Iran special operation, cough, cough, war, at $900 million a day that funds 222 days or 7 months. That's a long haul till mid-October, and I'm doubtful. Fast major operation to finish this? Discuss and analyze, ye great sages.
And thank you so much for the kind words of the support. And I'd have to say that it's definitely going to be going on for a while. No matter how much a lot of people, kind of like overhype American military capabilities, things are never done easily or quickly. And we were saying that here on the channel as well, that this is not going to be something that's extremely quick. I mean, I said at the minimum, it's definitely going to be 2 to 3 months. That was before the war even started. I was like, this isn't going to be something quick. I mean, it might even be a half year. The Gulf War was a half year. And it could be a little bit longer than that, but that would start getting a little bit unlikely. So with the war going on till October, if that was the projected window right now, definitely possible. It's not out of the question at all. But some people out there, I gotta say, folks, that the analysis sphere is just really like infuriating to me. Like how much everyone gets a lot of stuff wrong, because it's basically just like a lot of analysts just kind of go with their feelings, and if they like America, the war will be done in 3 days, and if they don't like America, America will be completely defeated, and we could be there for 100 years and we would still lose. And it's like there's no real analysis in that. It's just all opinion guiding the final input or the final analysis of whatever they're saying. But generally, from what we can tell, it would be going on for a little bit. But it sounds like Matthew has something to add in. What do you want to say, Matthew?
I was about to say, he mentioned calling it a special operation or like a special military operation. I don't know why they keep calling it that, because to me, that's, I'm not superstitious necessarily, but at the same time though, y'all know how they call the Titanic the unsinkable ship. That was a bad idea because obviously, fate had it that the ship got sunk. I'm not superstitious, but it's like probably calling a ship unsinkable is probably not a great idea. It's probably guaranteeing it's going to sink. Also calling a war a special military operation, it's like we see how that went with Russia. Like Russia tried to do that same little scam tactic by calling it that instead of calling it a war, by trying to make it seem like it's not as serious as it truly is. And I mean, it's kind of like a little bit of like jinxing it a little bit. It's like, do we really want to call it a special military operation? Also, by the way, it's like the Russian public, like no offense, the Russian public is probably a lot easier to fool with stuff like that than the American public, because I'm not totally sure how the education system stacks up inside of Russia versus the United States. But I think Americans might be a little bit more privy to, nuances like that. At least I think. I might be wrong on that these days. I can't tell. But I think it's not going to fool Americans like that. So I don't even know why they're doing that, to be honest, calling it that. I just wish they would just call it a war and leave it for what it is.
Also, by the way, according to the Oxford Dictionary of Languages, the definition of war as a noun is a state of armed conflict between different nations or states or different groups within a nation or state. That's a very broad definition, folks. And that basically means that if anyone's shooting at another group, and those groups are saying that they're fighting each other for some reason, that's a war. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand, is that you can try and kid around with the wordage, but if you're shooting at someone, and they're shooting back, that's a war. There's no other way around that. And I know, and I gotta say, I know the dumb tricks that people try and pull. Well, for sure, they technically haven't declared war. You don't have to declare war, folks, for it to be a war. Like, what is the whole thing that we did with Vietnam? You don't ever hear people calling it the Vietnam Schism. It's called the Vietnam War. What in the world was the thing that happened in Korea? It was the Korean War. What in the world was that thing we did with Iraq in 1991 and 2003? The war in Iraq and the Gulf War. What in the world was it when we went into Afghanistan? The war in Afghanistan. All of those are called wars by the U.S. public, and not a single one of them had an official declaration of war. Not a one of them. And we call those wars. But then when it comes around to this one, oh, well, the president isn't starting foreign wars. It's just a little special caveat vacation. It's like, that's not how this shit works.
Excursion.
Yeah, an excursion. This is a war. When you shoot at someone, it's a war. When the Taliban shot at the Pakistanis, that was a war. When the cartel went to fight in the Mexican government, that is a war. Like, those are what those are. All of those things are wars. If any group with any sort of power fights another group with any sort of power in an organized structure, it's a war. This is a war.
Yeah. And also, it's like, I saw some people saying, well, it's a legal loophole, so that way the president can keep the troops deployed and keep fighting the situation without having to get a declaration of war from Congress. That's still not the case. Like calling it a special military operation does not forego the requirements of the Presidential War Powers Act. He still has a certain amount of time that he can keep the troops over there without a declaration or receiving approval from Congress. Calling it something different doesn't change that. So it's purely for the public's benefit by calling it that. It's basically trying to sugarcoat it and make it seem like, oh, it's just a little side thing. It's literally exactly what Putin did, literally verbatim. And I don't understand why we're trying to fall in the same trap that Putin, because obviously that didn't go very well for Putin calling it that.
Yeah, and also it's really like it's really BSing it a lot, like to the point that it's insulting. It's like, what, like, and what's crazy is, folks, is that some people are actually goofy enough to take the bait. Well, my guy who's political and I love him, he said it's not a war. It's like, well, it is one. It's like, like you don't really get around that. Like we had a war with the Houthis a couple of times when we bombed them and they were shooting at our ships. Those were little wars that happened. And a lot of people don't look at it that way, but that's what they are. And it's like, I don't play games with that. Like the war in Ukraine is a war. I don't care what the hell the Russians want to call it. If the Russian army is shooting at the Ukrainian army, that's an ongoing war. And if it's been going on where 1.5 million Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, who the hell's arguing that that's just a little deal? Like,
Yeah, really. It's like that also looks really bad too. It's like to call something a little minor excursion or like a special military operation and you lose like 1 million plus guys. It's like, damn. It's like if that's what the little excursion looks like, I can only imagine if Russia actually went to war, their whole population's gone.
For say goodbye to all of the living males in the country from 1-year-old to 80. Like it's like I guess everyone's going. But like that's something I gotta say. Like with this whole deal with the little excursion or whatever the hell they're calling it. And then they flip that wordage around every day too. It's just kind of like convenience. One day it's legitimately a war when it's going really good, and then the next day when it looks like it might not be going too good, then it's a little excursion. And it's a flat out war. That's what it is. And also on top of that, folks, the other thing is that the only reason that the president is currently doing this and didn't require an official declaration of war from Congress is because of the War Powers Resolution Act, which allows him to go to war for 60 days plus 30, so a total of 90 days, without having to have the consent approval or a declaration of war from Congress. So literally the very act that he's currently conducting this action under, and he's not calling it a war, the literal act is called the War Powers Resolution Act. So I mean, like, could we make that any more obvious that this is a war? But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can, but it's a spade's a spade. I'm not gonna ever hide away from not saying that it's a war.
That's facts.
It's straight up facts. And if people don't like that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you that you live in denial.
You don't have to get ahead of them. You don't have to get ahead of them and tell them that nobody's even objected yet. You don't have to get ahead.
Oh
of
man,
them.
yeah, I gotta beat him to the punch, damn it. But anyways, a big thanks to you for your support and helping this channel to keep on running. With that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Ronan Classified, and thank you, Ronan, for that $20 support. He said, yesterday's stream, you said, we got drive-by shootings in Tehran before we got GTA 6. I'm sorry, but that's false. Tehran is GTA 6, and the bunker busters are just the pre-order bonus. And sorry, I have dark humor, and LSA forever.
Honestly, you're right. Like, he's not right, I mean, he's not wrong, That's what the phrase is. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, I appreciate it. And a big thanks to you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, we do have a $10 support from Raven Patah. And thank you very much, Raven, for that 10. He said, war is a war. Peace is a peace. Or is it? Or do we live in 1984 already?
We kind of live in like 1984 with the wordage and how people will just go along with it to the end of time. Like, the economy is not doing bad. It's just having a little reset. It's like, well, that sounds like it's doing badly. It's not a war. It's an excursion. That sounds like it's a war. We're not sitting here and trampling on people's rights. We're trying to improve national security by temporarily suspending some privileges. That sounds like, you're crushing rights. No matter how much you try and gloss stuff over by just coming up with other words to use in the dictionary, things are pretty straightforward. Like, you're not a customer service associate. You're a cashier. You're not a sanitary specialist. You're a janitor. We're not, like, let's see, what in the world would it be called nowadays? Foreign military analysts and policy experts. We're news people. Like, like you can come up with whatever the hell special little frou-frou words you want, but you can always boil it down to what it basically is in the end of the day. And, anything else beyond that is just trying to sugarcoat it for the hell of it.
You're not doing bad things to prisoners in Guantanamo. You're simply enhancing the interrogation. That's all. You're spicing it up a little bit. That's all you're doing. The fun fact about that, it's really honestly not a fun fact. It's sort of like a dark fact, actually. The people that came up with the wordage for that got paid a lot of big bucks to come up with a way to word that. So that way it sounded mundane and generally harmless for the most part, like saying enhanced interrogation and stuff like that. There was a lot of thought that went into wording that way specifically for that exact reason, which is kind of crazy work, honestly. It had people fooled for a while. They were like, oh, look, guys, they're not down there doing, things that are questionable to people down there in Guantanamo. They're simply giving them the enhancements. It's like, well, some people call it enhancements and some people call it, a little bit extra.
We're not firing you. We're making you redundant.
Exactly. We're not, ruining your career. We're just laying you off.
We're not firing people in mass layoffs. We're simply restructuring the company.
We're not, we're not babbling. We're just yapping.
Look, Jack, you brought up yapping. I'm the master yapper. But look, back in Scranton, look, you gotta understand. Back in the day, everybody said that I was going to start a world war. Now look at them. It's like, now they're begging for it. Look, Jack, I was ahead of my time. They said I was going to start a world war with Russia. Now this guy is starting a world war over Iran. Look, when you deal with the grocery stores. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Keith Sires, and thank you, Keith, as well for that 20. He said, if Russia is helping Iran with Shaheeds by shipping them across the Caspian Sea, can Ukraine sink the shipping? And long live the Leaf Spring Army.
And long live the Leaf Spring Army, and absolutely they can. It would technically be a military target at that point for transporting military equipment. So a big thanks to you for support. I hope that addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Thomas Timms, who put in a $20 support as well, but did not leave a comment here. But thank you very much, Thomas, for that 20. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're still massively appreciative of your support and helping this channel to keep on running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Ron. And Ron said, great news, y'all, and keep it up until...
And thank you so much for the kind words, and we will keep it up. A lot of people used to say, well, what happens, Enforcer, when the war in Ukraine ends? What are y'all going to do? And I'd always say, well, I don't know. And over the course of the years, we found something out, folks. Nothing ever ends. There is always something happening. So this channel will probably be around for an incredibly long time because, to be entirely honest with y'all, the world is a crazy place, and there's always something happening in it. So big thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, we do have here a 20 from Lost once again. And thank you very much, Lost, for that 20. He said, thanks, guys. And you two are about half crazy. I mean, are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? I could be full crazy, for all you know. But he said, I like that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. He said, you give good info, and you're the best current event informers that I've seen. I appreciate you. And I think a lot of others do, too. And big thanks and good night.
Oh, and thank you so much for the kind words. We're kind of a little crazy, the fact that we stay dedicated to this grind 7 days a week at this point, but I think that's a good thing. And I saw an old warrior fella say a little while in the chat, he was like, there's no way y'all can convince me that this isn't fun. Oh, no, it's fun to do. Like, I gotta admit that. I will say this, though, that too much of a good thing, it can kind of get, like, tiresome sometimes. Like, it's incredibly fun to do, but every once in a while, like, to be entirely honest, like, over the past few days since we had to go do that whole escapade over Monday and Tuesday, I'll be honest with y'all, I've kind of been like, damn, I can't wait for the Monday to come around so that way I can at least have the afternoon off, because I'm quite tired, and, like, still, even after getting some good sleep, I still feel like I haven't really recovered from just being, like, burnt over Monday and Tuesday. What, huh?
You're going to get called into HR for that.
Oh, man, the joke was so good, HR wants to hear it.
HR wants to hear it. I tell you what, the boss is going to want to hear that one.
But that's kind of the truth. Like, it's an incredibly fun thing to do. I love covering the news, and I love getting to talk about it. It's just that sometimes, though, it can get like a little bit tiring to do because we do it so much. But to be honest, after I get through that tiredness, which generally happens every Monday, where I get to kind of like get some rest and kind of mentally not think about this for most of the day that day, it's always a blast to get back to it and keep it running. Like I cannot lie, folks. I know that there's a lot of people out there who always make it sound like, oh, YouTube is a grind, and it is. Like basically, if you work a YouTube channel, like the truth be told, folks, you're like working like minimums if you want to make a YouTube channel succeed, like 70, 80-hour weeks at a minimum. Like you never really get
Isn't that crazy? It's like most people think, oh yeah, I want to do YouTube. Those YouTubers have it so good. They're just like they get to set their own schedule and stuff like that. They don't realize you don't get to set your own schedule, because if you start doing that, you start getting messed up in the algorithm, which ruins your whole channel at that point. So you really don't get to set your own schedule. You got to do it consistently, or otherwise, it may not go so well.
Yeah, you pretty much got to slave away on once you get on YouTube. Like, there's no real taking a break on it. You just got to keep going. And if you ever really like stumble and fall, and I mean like for like a good minute, YouTube will really bump you down in the algorithm for that. So you got to keep the whole thing running. So you really can't stop. Now, that's not to say that it is a horrific job. Like, if you love what you do, like we do, it's still incredibly fun, even with all the hours we put in. But it does get tiring. Like, that's one thing I can say. And after Monday and Tuesday this week, I'm not going to lie, folks, it's been feeling like a little bit of a struggle to get through this one. Not to say I'm still not having fun. It's just that I kind of want to have, like, a minute to kind of breathe a little bit. But also before anyone even says, oh, cancel the show. Hell no. Like, the shows run 6 days a week. And I can promise y'all, no matter what, I don't even care how tired I am, the shows will run 6 days a week. So a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the whole thing that we do. And someone's about to come and be like, you're a weakling. Man, I know it's coming. I work 100 hours a week. I mean, honestly, good on you. But at the same time, though, like this is nonstop. Like we don't even get vacations. Y'all know the last time we took a vacation, folks, was that would have been the fall of 2024, I think. Am I right on that, Matthew? I'm trying to think about that. That was the Starlight, Starlight Amtrak.
Well, I mean,
right?
technically, I guess you could call, like, I took 2 recon trips out here to Salt Lake City when we were deciding where we were going to move the HQ from Alabama. I guess you could call the first one a vacation, because I kind of came out here and just kind of lurked around a bit just to check the place out. I mean, I was going literally across the entire city, like trying to make sure I was finding the right place that we wanted to be. But I mean, I guess you could call it a half vacation, a half kind of like a work thing. I mean, it depends on what you define as a vacation, basically.
Well, I mean, really it wasn't like entirely a vacation, because I mean, like we were like, basically running ragged once we got out here trying to look at, HQ spots, possible HQ spots and stuff like that. So, I don't really count those as vacations, because like a vacation to me, folks, is where you like take a break and you come back feeling refreshed and energized to get back at it. And whenever we did those recon trips, I'll be honest, man, I came back and I was absolutely beat, exhausted, and worn out, more so than I was before I left. So I wouldn't really call those vacations. I would say that those were
I felt great. I felt great after coming back from those vacations. I was like, dang, this is so much nicer than when we were living in Alabama. I was like, this is nice. And also, everybody was so friendly out here too. I was like, dang, I feel better like coming back from here. I felt depressed going back to Alabama. I was like, geez, I feel like depressed. We know nice people in Alabama. Like we know some nice people that live there and stuff. But I just like, it's just not my personal place. I don't really like the environment that well, to be perfectly honest. I like it out here a lot better. It feels a lot lighter and a lot friendlier, at least to me.
Salt Lake City is extremely nice. Like, I definitely agree. And over the course of about the 5 months we've been here at this point, that has never actually faltered. Like, I've maybe run into a person who seems to have like not the greatest attitude here and there, but it's not just absolutely like rotten like the experience kind of would be in a place like Birmingham. Like most people, like, and I'm not talking about like, people you would have like for friends and stuff, because I have friends from Alabama and they're all great folks because they're my friends and everything. But like, if you like, for example, folks, like if you want to go to like a place like a fast food restaurant, or just go get something to eat, or like go about your daily business and like, deal with people in the public, just doing stuff like that, like little errands and chores and stuff. like the experience is totally different. Like out here, people be like, "Oh, hello, welcome in. How are you doing?" Like out there, people would just stare at you, and if you wanted to ask them, they'd be like, "What you want?" And I was like confrontational even. It's like very different sort of experience. I would say though, like coming out here to Salt Lake, I remember like the time I was out here before. Well, the one time I was able to come out here before we moved out here, I was like, "Wow, it's so magical." And then I came back afterwards, but I was still exhausted afterwards, but it was really something. I gotta say, folks, Salt Lake City, definitely a cool spot. Really, really cool. 10 out of 10. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Vesper, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Vesper, for that support. They said, good evening, Enforcers, and thank you again for the excellent coverage. And today is my birthday. And also, happy birthday to you, Vesper, by the way. I hope it's been a good one for you. And they said, I have one question. Can I get a song recommendation from you too? LLT, LSA, and LLTR. Honestly, I've been on that classical grind recently. I know people are going to be like, wait a minute, 25 years old and you're listening to classical music. What the hell is wrong with you? I'm a little bit different. I actually listen to music from pretty much every genre. Like I see a value in most of it, except for like, songs that are like, I'm not into like rap music that talks about murder and all this other stuff like that. That's not my...
7 days.
I don't go for that stuff at all. It's not my thing at all. But I appreciate most genres of music, like even stuff that's just generally like I even appreciate hip hop music as well. As long as it's not just vile. As long as it's not vile, I appreciate music in general. But generally speaking, I would say Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata, the classic. That's my recommendation. But Enforcer, what say you?
What other classical music have you been listening to? Do you just like click on a random playlist and listen to them, or do you have kind of like a selection?
Well, Beethoven is number one for me. Cloud, I don't know how do you say that guy's last name?
Claude?
Yeah, Claude. Y'all know I'm talking about the composer Claude de. I forgot his last name. Y'all know who I'm talking about, anyways. Though, but
I'm trying to think of the guy
there,
myself.
Yeah, you know who about that guy, that Claude guy, not the AI, but the actual guy. Chopin is a good one. I like them all, honestly. Like, all of there's only like a few. It's not like they're adding new ones every day. They're kind of like dead. But it's pretty good music. I like it.
Have you ever listened to Verdi's Dies Irae?
No.
Oh, that's really good, dude. Like, that's actually a really good one. Like you got to listen to it. It's a really, really good one. Because how it kind of like what it is basically just like, let me see here, let me think, because it's a fairly classical thing that people would make scores of. And also I see everyone saying the name now. Now I know why you're like, that guy's name. Like now I know why you weren't wanting to say it on air. But anyways, beyond that though.
Oh man, I'm kind of childish, but honestly, I don't really know how to say it. Like I'm being legit. Like I don't even know how to really pronounce it.
But beyond that though, let me see. I'm trying to think. Dies Irae is like is basically like from the Vulgate, which is the Latin Bible, and it's basically about the coming of the passing of one's life, basically the end of the death. And usually like the compositions and scores are usually iconic that have been made on that sort of a concept of Dies Irae. Like for example, Mozart's Lacrimosa, that one?
Yes, I do.
That one is actually from that. Like it's a part of that larger composition that Mozart made that was never completed. And that is actually an incomplete score by him that was completed by one of his pupils. But Verdi, who was an Italian composer in the late 1800s, actually made his rendition of Dies Irae, and I would say that it's probably one of the better ones because it's very dramatic and emotional, and very strong sounding too, and like it's very strong and then very soft in some places. Very interesting composition and really cool score.
Yeah, the best score, the one that now Moonlight Sonata is my favorite classical music score. Like I like that one. I like that one a lot. But a perfect score, like for YouTube. In fact, I used this in a video before. Claire de Lune is like a perfect one, by the way. That fits like a mystery theme for the most part, and it fits really good with like I think I put in the video about the possible like nuclear exchange that could happen between Russia and the West. I think I did a video documenting that, and also did did. I think he used that as the backing track for it as well, which actually worked pretty solidly actually. But the problem is though, it gets overused. Like everybody else apparently had the same thought that I had about that, and they used it in all their videos. So now it's like oversaturated. Everybody uses Claire de Lune as like the mystery track for like in everything.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a good score though. It's a really good one. And I saw see some people say Beethoven is a very good composer. He is a really good composer, but I'll have to say this though. Like I think that his tutor, who was Amadeus Mozart, was better in my opinion, because Amadeus Mozart had range. Like Beethoven generally did, I believe if I'm correct, just general compositions. But Mozart was able to do operas, compositions, and generally the whole mix of them. And I'd actually have to say, like, I'm not really a huge one on operas. It's not really my thing, but there's this really good opera that has stuck with me for a minute because I watched it and it was one of Mozart's, and it's Don Giovanni, if any of y'all know that one. And it was actually really interesting. It was about a very wayward and immoral noble from northern Italy. His name was Don Giovanni, and he basically just ran his life in the most immoral of ways, and he would never repent. And then it finally came time that the ghost of a man that he killed at the very beginning of the opera came back as a statue from his grave, like a living statue, and was like, you're either repentant or you're going to hell. And like the ending score of that opera and how it ended was just so interesting, because the guy would not repent, even being faced with death and feeling like the deathly chill come over him. He still wouldn't like repent from his ways, and he ended up being dragged to hell by demons, like because he was that wicked and corrupt. It was a really interesting story. Like it was very interesting to me, and that final score was like so strong and well done. I was like, damn, I was like, that is one of the best operas out there, really, at least to me.
Yeah. You know, I see people asking, well, what kind of music do you guys really listen to? I like the strings. I like the orchestra, like, instruments, the instruments that are in the orchestra. So I usually like songs that kind of mix that a little bit. That's why I like Coldplay. Coldplay is probably my favorite band of all time because they have the strings in there. They use real instruments. It's not, most of it's not electronic. I think these days they've gotten electronic with their music, but like old Coldplay, they had like legit like instruments they were playing in it, and they also brought in like strings and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's why I like it. I like any type of modern music that mixes in like legitimate like orchestras into their music. Like I like that a lot. That's my type of music.
Like my type of music actually is really weird because I listen to like a lot of patriotic music from different countries, even countries that we're enemies of. I listen to their music, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm like, I could take some ideas and inspiration for that, like get a little concept of like an idea of taking a little flavor of that and making it into an American patriotic song. Because I'll be honest with y'all, like even still to this day, like I listen to the wide mix. Like if y'all listen to my playlist, it's like Ukrainian historic and patriotic songs, Russian historic patriotic songs, American ones, British ones, German ones, Austrian ones from Austria, Hungary and stuff, Chinese ones, North Korean ones, Japanese ones, which is basically just a batatai. They don't really have a variety in China actually, but I listen to them all. I mean, like I'll like listen to them and be like, that's a really interesting kind of a thing that they did in the composition, because I'm not really one who listens to the words that are spoken a lot in music. I'm really one for more so the melody, so the language doesn't matter. It's more so if I really like the melody of the song, and so I just listen to a whole bunch of international music
Skill.
from all over.
I just like music where it actually takes skill to actually pull it off. Like I appreciate that a lot. Like when you have people like actually like that are really masters of their instrument, like like really good drummers. Because me personally, I was actually a percussionist. Like when I was in high school, I played the drums, I played the drum set, I played anything percussion, timpani, bass drum, snare, everything. Also xylophone, pretty much anything percussion. I was playing it for the most part. So I appreciate a really good drummer in a band, and I appreciate anybody that can actually master an instrument. Like that's what I really appreciate. And also people that are really good vocalists as well. I appreciate that a lot. One thing I don't appreciate, like I like electronic music a little bit, but I'm not hating on people that like electronic music, but there's not as much skill that goes into necessarily making computerized music as it is like actually having to master a real instrument, at least in my opinion.
I love orchestral music because there's such a wide variety that you can do with an orchestra, because you have, if I'm thinking correctly, it's about into the high 60s, about 70 instruments and 70 actual, I guess you could say, orchestra members that are a part of that, and you can do so much with an orchestral score, whether it's an opera or a composition, where you can evoke so much emotion without anything having to be said. You can invoke anger, rage, and there's these little tiny flourishes and nuances that you can also write into the score that adds so much to it. That's why the intro is all orchestral, is because I just find that sort of music to be very compelling to me. Like, I feel like it just surges forward with whatever it's trying to convey, and you don't have to say it in direct words to get it across. The music itself gets it to you without a word being said. You can understand it in any language. So I'd have to say, and also that's why, by the way, folks, at the beginning of the intro, like the intro, the anthem and everything sounds way more prideful and powerful than most normal compositions of it, because I believe that the music itself drives the emotion. And so when I was working with the composer, Marcus Barilari, I was like, I want this to sound as proud and strong and powerful as it can be, because it needs to be conveyed through the music alone and nothing else. Like nothing should be needed to make this score not sound powerful, and he did amazing with it. I mean, it sounds great to me. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than Flat for Life, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for the support as well. They said, of course, Iran still has air defenses on the eastern side of the country. That shouldn't be a surprise, as the operation's opening stages all began west of Tehran and along the southern Gulf coastline.
And that is true. I didn't hear about that F-35 being in the eastern area of the country, from what I would know, but I'll have to go and look at that. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have another 10 from Raven Patah. And thank you, Raven, for the second support of the night. He said, I'm glad to see the people tonight are not going below $10 donations. He said, in my book, it's respectful. Also, we appreciate all donations, by the way. He said, anyway, what kind of sci-fi stuff do you guys appreciate?
Oh, sci-fi. That's an interesting one. I'm actually a little bit of an enjoyer of it all, like Warhammer 40K, Star Trek, Star Wars, Dune. They're all actually quite interesting. What's interesting to me, though, is that coming from a history background and someone who's really interested in history, you can actually tell where they get the inspiration from for all of those, because they actually... Like, a lot of the sci-fi writers are also very big into history and usually a specific era, and they take a lot of inspiration out of that for their books, for their writings, and then eventually the media that comes out of them. Like, for example, like George Lucas took a lot of inspiration for Star Wars from how basically the modern world during the Cold War was operating, which is very interesting. Like, especially if you look at the prequels, I mean, it was basically all of the diplomatic intrigue that we're seeing literally right now in the present day, and a lot of people have been making fun of that lately. It was like, oh, he was ahead of his time. And then Dune, for example, is built off of the concept of it back when Dune was written, the very exotic lands of Arabia, like the Arabic Peninsula and the flow of the oil coming out of the region, which is the spice in Dune at Arrakis, and how the spice must flow and everything. It's really interesting to me how they pull a lot out of real life to make their stories in science fiction, and that's what I find really interesting about them. But I honestly say I enjoy them all equally, even Warhammer 40K, which is way out there compared to like Star Trek, Star Wars, and the other ones. Like, it's very interesting stuff because they get very creative and imaginative with how they come up with their fictional worlds and universes and how they all work and interact in their own little bubble. So big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Christian Noriega, and thank you very much, Christian, as well, for that support. He said, we need to pay attention to those, we need to pay attention to China. They're playing the long game, and they're going to invade Taiwan by 2027.
I would definitely agree, and a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, it's time for us to move on. And also, Larkin Hazmat said Tolkien inspired all of them. Actually, that is true to a degree. He actually did. But you know what's interesting is that Tolkien is like the last of a breed, because the fantasy world didn't really go the direction it was supposed to go, because a lot of those fantasy writers actually got killed in the First World War, especially those out of Britain, because Britain was kind of the movement of the fantasy world, like Lord of the Rings, which is Tolkien's work. They were really the big movers of that sort sort of a genre, and a lot of them ended up getting killed in the First World War, and the only reason that Tolkien survived is because he got a very bad case of pneumonia in the Western Front. He was sent back home because he was no longer deemed to be serviceable for the armed forces of the British Army. So that's the only reason he survived, and he was able to finish his works and then put them out. And then they became cult classics decades after they were published. But that's something that's wildly
why are all the tech like defense bros, the ones that were in tech that went into defense, why are they all obsessed with Tolkien and naming their companies like like Palantir, like Anduril and stuff like that? Like, not hating on them, but it's like, why are they so obsessed with it? I don't understand it.
Well, it's actually it's a really it's kind of a little bit of like a ideological thing to a sense, because it's kind of taken on a bit of like an ideology of like, we need to bring back like these great concepts, these fanciful concepts that existed in Western Europe that kind of got sadly killed off in the First World War for the most part. But the thing that's really like driving a lot of people is that if you've ever written or if you ever read Tolkien's books, I don't know if you have, Matthew. I've only read maybe one or two of them, but they're actually wildly interesting. Like they're actually very deep. As far as their world building, they're very enthralling, right? I mean, like, they're very exciting reads, and they kind of stick with you for a while because they make this fantastic sort of a world that they run the story through. And so I think that's why they all are kind of into it, because it's just a wildly interesting sort of a genre and a very interesting book, or a series of books more so. And it's just incredibly captivating. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, Silence. It's really captivating sort of a read.
I think the best book writers are the ones who have been through a lot of real life shit, to be honest. I think they're probably the best ones, honestly. It seems like all the famous writers and authors and stuff like that, they've all had like something happen to them, either in a war or something, or they lived through something bad, and it sort of like made them write sort of dark, but also kind of like fascinating too.
Yeah, I also saw someone say, I never got into it. I think you're talking about fantasy in general. I'll be honest with you, I don't like modern fantasy because it's corny to me. Like, Tolkien was genuine, like, in his writings. Like, it was a truly fantasy world, and it wasn't trying to lean too heavily into, like, the fantasy thing. It was just fantasy for the sake of it. And that's what made it wildly interesting. But nowadays, like with the fantasy thing, you have to have like the Viking dude with the horn helmet, and he's got to be saving like the supermodel damsel in distress from like Claude von Frollo or, whatever. And it's like, I just, it's like, that's just really not interesting to me. And they always write and read and play out the same way. And I feel like that's what really kind of kills off the fantasy genre these days, is that it basically is a parody of itself, really, in my opinion, unlike other categories like sci-fi, which actually try to be kind of like original and very interesting with most of what it does. And so that's why I just don't really like fantasy. I feel like fantasy is just really corny these days. But Matthew just pointed out we have 40 super chats to go, and so we definitely need to get to those. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Live Animal, who said, I heard the Iranian oil is basically sellable, but the sale proceeds won't go to Iran. I'm not sure if that's the reality or not.
We would have to see, but a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Colin, who said, Komeni Aloha, his last snack bar. I'm surprised by the lack of Aloha snack bars coming out of the Iranian videos. It must be a Syrian thing.
It is definitely a Syrian thing. We don't even really see that coming out of Iraq a lot. Like, that is a solely Syrian thing. Don't know why, but it is. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Sadata Hosoda, and thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, Dick Cheney, the ghost of Gulf War's past. Scary.
Yeah, it is. But they share his support and help this channel to keep it running. But I mean, he had a reason. Like, he was on that grind. I think Cheney's drive for oil, like his insatiable lust for the stuff, was because of the understanding that without it, the gears stopped turning, basically. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Ian Mitson, who said assault tractors from last night was hilarious. And do you know how is internet in Russian? It's internet.
That's a good one, actually. It's internet. But it's still a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Ross Nib, who said, hello, what does Marmot say about eating elephant ears? Marmots stay the hell away from it because it's almost like going through a little bit of a torture routine. Actually, they kind of put Matt through a little bit of torture with that one. He, it's sort of a bit of a problem there. They should keep that out of the backyard. But Enforcer, what say you?
I definitely agree. And a big thanks to you once again for support, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Dan Brooks, who said, I see Rods from God satellite weapon system mentioned in the chat on a frequent basis. It is an unrealistic system, and could you guys give a breakdown on it? I wasn't that the whole thing started from like the Call of Duty series? Was that originated from the Call of Duty series?
Actually, it was a concept before Call of Duty, but Call of Duty borrowed it for a story device, basically.
I think that's what made it popular, because I never really heard anybody talking about that really much before then.
So the Rods from God concept, or basically the space launch kinetic weapons concept, which is what it really is in its technical term, is a concept to where we would have a floating satellite in orbit with a large amount of tungsten rods inside of it. Whenever ordered, this thing would be able to, the satellite would be able to direct itself towards a general direction and then jettison one of these tungsten rods that would then be fed by gravity back through the atmosphere and towards its target. It would operate entirely off of kinetic energy, and the concept is that a tungsten rod of a certain size and certain weight re-entering the atmosphere would be able to hit the Earth's surface with enough kinetic force that it'd basically be like a nuclear weapon without a nuclear weapon. That was the general idea that surrounded the space delivered kinetic weapons system. In reality, it would never work because tungsten rods of that size would be unbelievably heavy, and transporting that amount of tonnage into orbit would take an unbelievably large amount of effort and cost, meaning that those weapon systems really just wouldn't be that effective. And not only that, with the modern orbital warfare that's been developed by the United States and possibly China, but we don't believe that they're to the degree that we're at, that satellite could actually be easily disabled if a war was to start, generally making that entire weapon system moot and completely pointless and a huge waste of money. So that's generally why it's a completely pointless system, and it stays in the public imagination because it's a wildly crazy concept, giant tungsten rods being launched from space. It's crazy, but it would never really work in reality. We would have to see huge advances in spacefaring technology to ever even try and make a system like that feasible. But a huge thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a support here from none other than Joppy, who put in a 20. And thank you, Joppy, for that support. He said the key to stopping China is to prevent its ability to obtain potash fertilizers, but to do that, Russia needs to fall.
And I would definitely have to say that that is true. And also, we've been hearing that there's now stopping the export of fertilizers, which is concerning. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Old Warrior Fellow, who said, there are questions in the chat if you have a Discord chat, and can you address that?
And can you read that one again?
There are questions in the chat if you have a Discord chat. Can you address that?
And I thank you so much for the support, but sadly, we never really address much from the Discord on air because I had to do a lot of digging to figure out exactly what I'm supposed to be addressing at that point. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from the Millennial Modeler, who said, I love model trains and I love music. Mozart smokes, but I'll have me some Van Halen, that rocks a little harder. And y'all are cool. Cheers from Ohio.
And a big cheers to Ohio, and a big thanks to you for the support. And I gotta say, I love my model trains as well. I've been hearing that they've been announcing some really cool stuff lately. I'm a huge fan of scale trains, by the way, just to let people know. I swear by their products, they're great. And I've really been looking forward to a lot of their announcements that they have. I heard that they're going to be coming out. I heard about their in-scale SD70 Aces. I've been hearing, and I think I heard that they're going to be coming out with HO scale SD70 Aces in the future. I'm wanting them. I really want them one day to come up with some more of the Genesee and Wyoming stuff because I really loved what they did with the Dash 9s this time, but I was really wanting to see more of them. Like, maybe even like some little short line railroads like the Alabama-Tennessee River Railway or the Alabama, yeah, I think it is the ATR River Railway or something like that. I wish they would make some stuff like that because it would be so cool. I know there wouldn't be a lot of people who would buy those out there, and that's probably what's limiting them from doing it, but they make amazing products, and if they made something, I always try and get at least one of them because they're great. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and the kind words. And with that, we are on to the next one.
That's up a 10 from Kyle Padell. He said, look at the blue well of Catoosa, Oklahoma.
And the blue well of where in Oklahoma?
Catoosa, Oklahoma.
How do you spell that?
Catoosa.
The blue whale. That's a whale. It's got a baseball cap. Whale, whale, whale. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And also saw a cryptid say, I think you misunderstood the question. We were asking for the existence of a Discord server. We will never have an official Discord server as the Enforcer channel. We have had 2 of them in the past, way back during the first year of the channel. And both times they ended up being significant mistakes and failures, not because of the people who would join them, but because of how things would just go with running Discord politics with basically like 60% of the moderators every single time, which would end them in tragedy. But outside of that, I would say that there are some fan Discord servers which are great, and we're actually in, I think, like 1 or 2 of them. But generally, we will never run like an official Enforcer Discord channel because it's too much sugar for a dime, and it takes way too much oversight. And like I gotta say, like 6 times out of 10, most moderators have like this huge like power trip, like narcissism syndrome thing, to where they basically just try and either use their influence at that point to destroy the channel for the hell of it, or they just start trying to do whatever the hell they want, regardless of what our image is for the channel. And that's why we'll never have one directly affiliated and operated as a part of the Enforcer channel again. But a big thanks to you.
It runs much better. It runs much better as a fan run server. By the way, we have folks that are in the chat right now actually that run the fan Discord server, like Miss Disa. Nutters is not here tonight, but he also helps run it as well. It's completely run by them, by the way. Like I'm over there in the Discord server, but we don't have any like anything to do with the running of it. Like it's completely run by the fans, like Miss Disa and Nutters, etc. So it works much better that way. And honestly, it takes a huge load off of us because honestly, we don't really have the time these days to moderate or control a Discord like that. It's just too time consuming.
Yeah, it really is. And the fan servers run great, but it's just that we'll never run one because in the 2 attempts that we had that, I mean, they like literally just unabashedly turn into dumpster fires basically. And like, we just don't really have the time of the day to try and wrangle like dozens of Discord mods in an official server that we're basically overseeing, because they just want to do whatever the hell they want, or they want to like basically punish people for their political opinions and all that stuff, and basically let people slide by with heinous stuff because they're their friends. Like we just don't have time for that. But the people on the fan servers though run it amazingly. So a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from LJ Jidus. He said, in consideration of Matt's like of the classics, you should do a little look at Abvanal Hall in downtown Salt Lake.
And you know, we should. We'll have to take a look at that sometime around in down the town of Salt Lake. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Ulf Hednar, who said, if you like orchestral and cultural music, you ought to check out Dizike Palivani by Dizhivia. He's a Belarusian composer, and the vocals are in Belarusian as well. And he does a lot of Slavic folk music.
Oh, that's really interesting. I thank you for supporting and sharing that, and I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. You know, I'd have to say, like, the Russian, like, generally Russian and Belarusian, which actually are kind of basically the same. Ukrainian's very different, but the Belarusian and Russian composers, I find them very interesting because their music always takes on, mostly, a very depressing tone. Like, it's like brutal, basically. Like, life is hell and it will never get better. That's usually what I've seen in most of the music. But it's
Have you heard
really...
Russian music?
Huh?
Have you heard Russian music?
Like modern or classic?
Oh no, like modern Russian music. It's hopeless. Like modern Russian music, it is desperation. It is dark, and also like for the artists in America that become popular in Russia, it's usually like very very moody, sort of like dark music to a large degree that becomes popular inside of Russia because that's kind of like generally what appeals to the population. It's not a lot of hope in Russia.
You know, actually, the classical music's like that too. Like a lot of it is like just hopeless. Like some of it's really interesting. Like they'll have an entire song about riding in the back of like a stagecoach, and they're just like it's just so interesting. Like how they can lay out like this just saddening and depressing atmosphere through most of their music. Very interesting to me. I love listening to it for that reason, because it's just fascinating to me how they can like basically live in a historically never-ending depression. And they just accept that as like reality. But anyways, big thanks to you for support, and I'll have to look into that composer. That's very interesting. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Lamborghini, who said, do you think that if the IRGC did not need so many chips for all their missiles, development on GTA 6 would be in an advanced stage, since we'd be too preoccupied to go to war? And greetings from South Africa.
And a big thanks to you for the support all the way down in South Africa. And maybe, I mean, maybe they could have. I mean, who knows? But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Laser, who said, if you ever are in Wisconsin, check out the Train Barn Museum. The owner loves model trains and works on the real deal.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool. And I'll have to check that out sometime around. And a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. With that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan, and thank you, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and a little bit for the skyrocketing gas prices.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and hopefully they'll get us a gallon at least. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Crispy, who threw in another support, a 10 this time, and thank you very much, Crispy, for, I believe it's the 3rd or 4th support of the night, and we do appreciate that very, very much once again. We also have a 5 from Ron Fannin. He said, LSA.
And LSA, and a big thanks to you both for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Kevin Reeg. He said, bless you, Enforcer.
And thank
What about
you.
me? I don't get any blessings or something?
Oh, Primo, bless you. Hey, what about me? Like, and he just floats away. Huh?
I guess I'm blessed enough already. Also, by the way, I'm joking, by the way, just to make that clear.
Man, bless you. But anyways, a big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, it's weird how sarcasm gets lost these days. I made a post today. In fact, I made 2 different posts on Twitter. One was about the joke that the president made toward the Japanese prime minister about not warning us about Pearl Harbor. People went berserk on me over that. And then they went berserk later because I posted an AI image that Iran put out claiming they had shot down an F-35. And it just happened to be that the F-35 was obviously out of scale. The thing was like as massive as like New York and obviously fake. But people went berserk. They said, Matt, this is clearly fake, you idiot. It's like, I mean, obviously it's fake. That was the whole point of the joke. It's like, that was the whole point. But anyway, so moving into our next one, this one goes to Douglas Little, who puts in a 5. He said, America and Boxer work well as aircraft carriers without landing Marines on the ground. Maybe posturing, but also added air power.
And I thank you for supporting. That's very interesting consideration there. And I gotta say, big thanks to you so much once again. Also, Mandy, I gotta say something. This has been bothering me all day because I'm one for being correct on things. You know, like making things make sense. Like when the president did that whole thing about the Pearl Harbor shtick. And he's like, why didn't Japan tell me about Pearl Harbor? It's like, you weren't even alive yet, man. You were born in 1946, 5 years later.
It was a joke.
I know, but I mean, like, the punchline's got to be good, though. I mean, like, it's got to be some, like, semi-realistic. It's like, how are they supposed to tell him about Pearl Harbor when he's not even alive yet?
Honestly, I'll say this, like, I'm not too fond of the foreign policy decisions being made right now, but I will say, though, like, I thought it was a decent joke. The Japanese prime minister didn't seem to appreciate that very much, which I could kind of understand why a little bit. But I thought the joke was pretty decent. I personally laughed a little bit at it myself. It was so wild to make that joke right in front of the Japanese prime minister. I think that was what caught me off guard.
I'm not gonna lie, it was funny, but like when I sat there and like reanalyzed it a second time, I was like, oh, what the hell? That doesn't even make any sense. Like, how the hell are they supposed to, like, the Japanese diplomats from Washington were supposed to go to his mom and, like, go up to, like, her belly and be like, Donald, we attacked the Pearl Harbor. It's like, what are they supposed to do? I mean, like, you know, it's like the joke didn't make any sense to me at that point because I was kind of, like, thinking for a second that he might have been an infant when that happened. And then I went and pulled it up, and it was like he was born 5 years later. That'd be like me becoming the president and going, I don't know, why didn't Germany tell me about invading Poland? It's like, that was like 80 years before I was born, even.
You know, honestly, the first thought I had, I'm not trying to be nasty or something like that, or like cruel or something, but the first thought that went through my head was, wait a minute, the president knows about Pearl Harbor? that was the first thought that went through my head. I was like, how's he know the history of Pearl Harbor and all that? I was like, oh, I'm not joking. That was literally the first thought that went through my head. I was like, that's impressive that he knows about Pearl Harbor. I'm impressed.
Man, I'm not gonna lie though, it was funny. But when I thought about it, because you know, like the thing is, folks, I know some people are like, don't overthink jokes. Yeah, it's probably not a good idea, but like, I'm just that kind of person that does though. Like if a joke doesn't make sense like that, like if I had said that joke, I would have been like right afterwards, it was a stupid joke, and then I would have moved on. But like that was like legitimately like the punchline. And I was like, you weren't even alive. Like it just stuck with me after that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Kyle Padell. He said, what do you think about playing trap beats over a loudspeaker in Tehran for hours on end to annoy the IRGC?
Violation of the Geneva Convention, 100%. Like that is a war crime. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Samuel Kennedy. He said LHDs, LPDs, and LSDs are all capable of splashing amphibs. An MEU is roughly a battalion reinforced, and think like a brigade.
I don't really know about those whole LSDs. I think we need to make those illegal. I think those are actually illegal. I think that's a class 1 drug. I'm just kidding with you, by the way, but you are absolutely correct on that. But technically, the America, at least the first 2 of the America class, which would be the USS America and the Tripoli, they're actually not, because they don't have well decks, which is something I found out just recently from all the folks in the chat. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Joppy, who said, I just thought that he misspoke and meant to say us instead of me.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, at the same time, everybody always says, oh, the president didn't mean this, he meant that, like, when he says something like, everyone wants a dictator, and they're like, well, he didn't really mean a dictator, he meant, just a strongly, it's like, well, like, you kind of take words at face value, like, that's what I do, because that's, what a lot of y'all do when y'all listen to this channel, like, if y'all hear me say, oh, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be an issue, I don't go back later and go, well, I didn't mean the Strait of Hormuz was going to be an issue. I meant that it's something that we're going to be very happy about winning him because we're going to do so well. Like, that's, like, generally, like, I know that people are always going to, like, err on, like, the side of caution with him, but, like, I think he, like, legitimately meant, why didn't they tell him? Because, he's pretty straight up with his words, like, everyone always does that on everything he says, and then he doubles down on whatever he said, like, he'll be like, I think I'm going to blow up Kim Jong-un, and then everyone will be like, oh, he doesn't mean that, and then you'll, like, nuke him or something, and then everyone will go, oh, well, actually, he did mean it, it's like, so, at this point, I just learned from the pattern, like, if he said something, he, like, legitimately meant it that way, no matter how many people try and say he didn't mean it that way, and it was, like, a misspeaking, or everyone's misunderstanding it, but a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here, also, by the way, Robin Stevenson said it was an insulting joke, not really funny, more of a put down. Well, it's not unique to Japan, by the way. Like, he doesn't really use any, like, good sense when it comes to, like, making certain, like, kind of insensitive jokes in front of people. I will admit, though, like, people can't be too sensitive. Like, was it probably the best idea to make a joke about Pearl Harbor in front of the Japanese Prime Minister? Probably not. But, at the same time, though, I could see an argument that maybe people were being a little too sensitive about it. Remember, he did it with Kim Jong-un, too. He made a comment about him being fat, like, right to his face or something like that when he was at the demilitarized zone, like during his first term. He made a comment like, they like him nice and slim. Some people really aren't nice and slim. He's like some comment like that. And Kim Jong-un just looked baffled, like he was shocked that that even happened in front of his face. And he's crazy, like
That's not what you do in diplomacy either. Like, if you call over, like, Macron, you don't sit there and go, boy, the French were really there for the Second World War, running away. Like, you don't do that because that's insulting to their nation. I'll tell you all this, like, making a joke about anything pertaining to World War II to anyone in Japan is, like, a very bad idea, especially on diplomacy, because they look at that as horrendous. Like, not like the Germans where they're sorry. Like, the Japanese aren't really sorry about anything they did. They just look at it as a tragedy, though, because a lot of Japanese citizens died afterwards in the fire bombings that we conducted on their cities and the nuclear bombing, or the atomic bombings as well. So they look at it as an overall tragedy, and they don't like to touch it for that reason. The Germans don't really like to talk about the Second World War because of what they did, and that's a thing that nobody really likes to touch on in Germany. So we don't want to bring up a sensitive topic when we speak to the Germans. With Japan, and also someone said, who cares, they were evil. Well, they're not evil today. I mean, are they? What are they doing today? We're their allies. Think, man, it's not World War II anymore. They're literally here as our allies in the United States. You don't bring that stuff up.
Yeah, hopefully they don't make any jokes about, Germany and World War II. Now, that would be going way too far on that. But anyways, though, we also have a 7 from LOL, bro. This administration's saying whatever they need to calm the oil markets. And they're also meeting for inflation soon. Only 5% chance they lift the sanctions.
And I got to say, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that they don't lift the sanctions. They kind of already have. I hope that they reapply them. It's not really a good idea. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I love how some people are like, well, they're best. But here's the thing, though, folks. Like, here's something that's funny to me. How do y'all like it, though, when foreign politicians and diplomats come over to the United States and they talk about, oh, look at all of you Americans and how you treated the Native Americans and the Japanese and the Second World War and how you treated, certain minorities in the South, and everyone goes, oh, screw you, bastard, because they bring up like a touchy subject in America. You don't do that in diplomacy. Like, no matter how right that would be to say that that wasn't a good thing for them to do, you're an ally of that country today, so you don't go out of your way to just insult people for the hell of it. That's completely opposite of diplomacy. So I hope people understand that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Samuel Kennedy. He said, I should add that MEUs are mainly strategic assets, useful for force projection, and not commonly tasked for near-peer adversaries without help.
And that is true. Force Design 2030 is actually changing a lot of that, and the MEUs are, at least according to Force Design 2030, they're supposed to disappear and be replaced by the littoral combat regiments, the LCRs. But generally, that's been getting a decent amount of pushback in the Marines because they're saying that that's making them too regionalized, and they still need to be a globalized response force like they are with the MEU structure. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Jason. He said the USS Saipan. Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
Jason said the USS Saipan LHA-2 was an amphibious assault ship known for its well deck.
And that is true, but the LHA that I'm talking about, if this is an LHA, this is a Tarawa class. I was talking about the America class when I said they didn't have a well deck, because those are the only two who do not have a well deck. Every other one of these, the LHAs and the LHTs, all have well decks, except for those two in the America class currently, the USS America and the Tripoli. So I do thank you for support, and you are correct on that, and this is an LHA that does have a well deck. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Robert Massey, and thank you very much, Robert, as well, for that support. He said, I just want to say thank y'all for what you do. I've been watching for a long time, and my dad passed away right before Russia invaded Ukraine, and also my condolences to you, Robert. He said, you guys have sustained me since, and he always was informed.
And it's incredibly unfortunate to hear about that. Very sorry for your loss. But I do thank you so much for the kind words, and it's great to know that you consider this channel to be a great provider of news and generally helping you to continue on your father's legacy of being well informed. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a support from Double Dare, who puts in a 5 and said, was I mistaken, but did they claim they would like Iran to sell it? I thought they were going to take their already full tanker and sell it to everyone.
Apparently they're just going to lift the sanctions on them and let them go sell it to make themselves money, from what we know now. So I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you for the support. And we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal yet again, who said, we are staring at Iranian attacks on desalination plants, nuclear plants, oil infrastructure, and possibly a dirty bomb. I didn't know it would be this dire.
It's still manageable. It's just that, there's a lot of risk involved, and we've got to make sure to try and factor that in and make sure that they can't really land crippling hits. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Dean London, who said, I'm still loving the commitment, and Mrs. dropped my LSA mug, and I wanted another one when you go back into production.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support. We'll have to make sure to try and get the mugs back out so you can get a fresh one, a fresh new mug. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to, also, by the way, something that'd be a cool thing for the merch store. What if we make a mug or something like that, and you put like ugly mug, like the words ugly mug, like on the mug itself. So that way you can set it on a counter or something like that. And if you're around somebody that you're not really too fond of or something like that, you can kind of be like, look
at that ugly mug.
Look at that ugly mug over there. And it's like the person you don't like sitting over there, and they're like, huh, what'd you say? And they're like, hand me that mug, huh? And then they see the mug with like ugly mug written on the side of it. Like, that would be actually a pretty damn good thing right there. That might be a bestseller, actually, right there. I tell you what. But also we have a 5 from Sadata Hosoda, who put in a 5 and said, Dick Cheney, the ghost of the Gulf War's past, scary.
And I thank you for the support. We're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from TKS, who said the first MEU boat is going to support Sea Stallion minesweeping ops.
Possibly so, maybe. A big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Corky, who said Zone 5 Tech. They produce the drone defenses you say don't exist. Over $100 million in sales and about to boom. Pull up their website, please. U.S. based.
And I thank you for the support. And the drone defenses I say don't exist. You're saying that as though they are there. Where have they been used so far? Nowhere. So they may have 100 million in sales, but where are they? I haven't seen them. We're still shooting some drones down with some missiles. So not really there. But I mean, like they made us make sales, but using the things and buying the things very different, very different. You can buy the gun and not shoot the gun. So you may but a couple haven't used them. And what is the name of this company, Matthew?
Corky said Zone 5 Tech.
Zone 5 Tech, huh? Ah, yes, I see here. Zone 5. Oh, I don't think we'll be able to show this website. And, I'd have to say that, yes, this appears to be some sort of drone systems. Not really in the usable phase from what I can see. Mostly prototyping and such, from what I can tell. So that would
There's a
generally...
lot of companies. There's a lot of companies developing drone tech and also anti-drone defenses and things like that. There's lots of companies doing that. I think Anduril's one of them. I mean, there's a lot, but the catch is though, like, is it being widely fielded? And I don't know that.
It's not, because if it was, we would see that a lot of these attacks wouldn't be landing on their targets, yet they are. And also, if there was a lot of these widely fielded, then a lot of Middle Eastern countries wouldn't be happy for the Ukrainians sending down their own drone defense experts and also their own drone equipment to try and help defend the Gulf state skies. So, I know that many people always want to tell me that, I'm wrong on this about lack of drone defenses, but sadly, unfortunately, it is largely correct. Yes, company is good, and I can't show the website on air because there might be some copyright reasons and concerns, but they do exist, but it looks like they're still kind of prototyping, and depending on how expensive the drones are, 100 million of these things, $100 million worth of these things might be nothing, really. But a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Paul DeSeno, who said, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a lobotomy.
That's an old classic saying right there. And a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Wolf Hednar once again. He said, let's see here. Don't try those other bad plants out there. I've heard scary stories from those ones. I'll be honest with you, and also by the way, when you're young and stuff like that, yes, that was very stupid to just try to eat a random plant. Very stupid idea. Some other kids might have been smarter, than me and not do something like that. But where one kid does one thing stupid, another one does something else stupid. You always do stupid stuff when you're young. Some people do stupid stuff in different categories, but that was one of the most stupid things I did when I was young. Actually, right there. Thankfully, that was about as bad as it got. And, no lasting damage from it, except for maybe my pride a little bit. But it was honestly quite sketchy. I've never really felt anything like that. Be careful about that plant. But thank you very much, Old Hednar, for that support. We also have 5 from No More Mr. Fat Guy. He said, don't touch that plant again. Let's go. Yeah, don't touch that plant. We also have a 5 from What Is Real. He said, we all talk about Iran backing out of a nuclear deal, but what other countries in the Mideast are not a part of the NPT of 1968?
I believe technically none of them are. I think the only signing members of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaties are the actual nuclear armed powers that signed it at the time. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from my knowledge. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Joppy once again, who said, you can think of the name as Beethoven, except more of an E sound instead of an A.
And I thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Gaming, who puts in the 5. He said, currently America is out of 19 confirmed aircraft 21 days into the war, and mostly MQ-9s, some AC-135, and a few F-15, and now an F-35, only counting vidproof.
And I thank you for the support, but most of those losses are either from in-air accidents or friendly fire. I mean, we have actually at this point, except for the Reapers, the MQ-9 Reapers, we haven't lost a single manned aircraft to enemy fire. So, I'd have to say, I mean, some of them have been damaged, some of them have been shot down, but as far as the Iranians causing the damage, they've basically caused none except for to the Reapers, which are almost sitting ducks, really. So I hope that that's addressed it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, real quick, is poison ivy only something that Southerners deal with, or is that something that's across the whole country?
Let me see. Poison ivy range. So, oh my God, wow, that's actually extensive. That's not here where we're at, but it's basically everywhere else.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that means most people might know about that. But yeah, that's another horrible one, by the way. If you happen to brush up against some of that poison ivy, oh my God, that's a nightmare. That is a horrible nightmare, that stuff right there. It's
so
underrated.
bad.
Oh my God, it's underrated how bad that stuff is right there. If you live in the South, like especially down in the South, like it was very heavy in Alabama, like all over the place. If you went anywhere in the woods, you were always looking out for rattlesnakes and the poison ivy. Between the two, they're in my opinion, they were equally bad. The snake, you might deal with that for like a day or something like that, and go to the hospital. That poison ivy, you're going to be dealing with for weeks. It's awful.
I tell you, folks, I did get poison ivy a couple of times. And what's so bad about it, folks, is that it itches horrendously. And if you ever itch it and then you touch another part of your body, it spreads there as well. And that's what
I had to go to the hospital over that one time, or not the hospital, but the urgent care. I had to go to an urgent care over it and get a shot.
Yeah, I mean it was really bad with him. I mean, like, he was basically covered in it. I remember one time I had it on my legs, like almost up to my knees, and then I like itched it, and then I itched my arm, and it spread to one of my arms, like in a specific spot, and then I had to just like not itch the stuff, but it never stops itching, and it's the worst itch possible because it's so bad it demands that you itch it, and then you can. Terrible stuff. Like it's a torture really. But a big thanks to everyone once again for bringing up these poisonous plants to get us back on that conversation again, because poisonous plants are very interesting. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a five from the Polish drunk who said the triangle is a percussion instrument as well. LLT, LSA.
That is
And it
true.
is. I played that at one point. I hated that. I really hated the triangle. That was in what was called the auxiliary percussion section. You would play there was like the slapstick, there was the cymbals, there was the triangle, of course, and a couple other things like the stupid cowbell and stuff like that. I hated that position very badly. Thankfully, I never had to play that hardly ever. I usually played something else like the xylophone or something, or the snare or something like that. But I hated auxiliary percussion. It was awful. But Enforcer, what say you?
I was actually not a percussionist. I played trumpet when I was in the band, and folks, I just remember how that went, and I was like, that was so jacked up. You know how it was with the chair placement thing. There was a competitive chair placement where you had to challenge the person above you to be able to move up in chair, and I had started at fifth chair out of seven, and I worked my way all the way up to second chair, folks. And I challenged the first chair person, and the music director was like, "I wouldn't do that if I was you. That wouldn't be a good idea." And I was like, "Well, I mean, like if I challenged them, I'm going to get first chair, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, well, kind of." And I was like, "Well, I want to challenge him. I was like, I have a right to do that according to your rules." So then I challenged them, and I won because they just folded, like they didn't even want to like try. And so I got first chair, and then right after the teacher said, "Okay, everybody, new chair placement rule. Everyone doesn't have a chair anymore." And I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, that is messed up. I was like, that is absolutely messed up. Because like it happened on the very day that I challenged the person, got first chair. I completely gave up after that. I was like, screw band. I was like, this is ridiculous. And also there, like, to be honest, Matthew, there was like a lot of favoritism being like layered out, because everybody in the band at a point, like in like eighth grade, because this was like middle school band, everybody in the band at one point was like, yeah, this music teacher is very favoritist. Like if she likes you, you get to move up to the higher chairs, and if she doesn't like you, she will just basically make sure that you don't make it up there, and if you do, you'll get knocked back down a couple of rungs somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to like talk about everybody in the past because occasionally I'm sure people think after a while they're like, well, dang, you guys had bad experience with a lot of people. I know how that looks. So I'm like, people are gonna be thinking, dang, y'all must be the problem. But unfortunately, I don't really have anything nice to say about that lady either. She was honestly very mean. That lady was right there. She did crappy stuff like that. It wasn't just to us though. She did that to
Well,
everybody.
yeah, I mean,
She
everybody in the
just a bad
band was
person.
talking about it. Like, everybody was like, damn, like, this is like favoritist as hell. Like, if she likes you, you get far. If she doesn't, you don't. Like, honestly, folks, I think that's why I don't really have that positive a view of Alabama, because basically, like, at every single step, it was like we ran into like the rudest person. And I'd
I
be
think
like,
it was a school. I think it was just a school like that they just didn't have people that really had like good attitudes and stuff like that. Just the school system just wasn't it. I think that's why we had so many like consistently bad experiences, because if the core is rotten, then you're not going to have good people in there. It's going to be mainly problematic people.
So, and also I saw someone say, well, that's how you win awards for the school band. This is the thing that was infuriating to me, is that like that band teacher, and this is why I know it was like bogus, and this is also what like got me even more aggravated with it, is that year in eighth grade, before like the whole thing happened where I like quit band and just left it, we went to this thing in Montgomery, Alabama, because that was like the nearest city. You remember that, man? I forgot what it is, but it was the thing where you went there and you like got judged by the judges, and you get a medal if you got like a good, like a high score or something like that. Out of everybody in the trumpet section, I got the most medals. I got 6 of them. The next closest person only got 4. And the person who got 4 was first chair. I was 4th chair at that point, and I had 6 medals. And I was like, okay, so if everybody here thinks I'm doing pretty good at playing trumpet, why in the world is it that I'm 4th chair and I'm being told that I'm not that great at playing trumpet? Because apparently I'm okay at it. It's not like I'm terrible. And it's weird. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Colin Hinton, and thank you very much, Colin, for that support. He said, professional drummer and composer here, also the son of a Vietnam veteran, USMC Artillery Forward Observer. I knew I liked you guys.
And thank you so much for the support. And really cool to hear that you were a forward observer. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Yoma, who said, you guys need to be on YouTube Music, please.
Oh, well, maybe. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Mr. Tampico, who said, I love you guys, and sorry if you answered, but has the oil the U.S. wants to lift sanctions on already been sold? And if Iran already got paid, then why not use it? And also, by the way, the oil is sitting on Iran's ships, apparently. That's what the U.S. is claiming. They're claiming that they're going to let Iran sell the oil that's already loaded onto the ships. That's what they're saying. It's basically the same thing they're letting Russia do for the large part. It's pretty much identical to it. So they're considering letting Iran do it. Honestly, they should not, and they shouldn't have lifted the sanctions on Russia either. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say I would generally agree with Enforcer Matt on that. So big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Karas, who said, just showing support and love you guys, and thanks for the great news, and keep up the good work in LSA.
And thank you so much for the kind words and the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 3 from Django, and thank you very much, Django, for that $3 support. We also have a 2 from Zany and Co., who said, make 7 something importable again.
And a big thanks to you for the support, and perhaps we'll see. But a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Heroes Workshop. He said, there's word that the flamboyant Kathleen Ayatollah is now toast.
We've heard that, but we haven't been able to confirm that yet. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Kevin Reeg, who said they're going for Karg.
Going for Cog? Maybe. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Marc-Andre Brunette and also Daphne Jones. And thank you both very much for that $2 support. And we also have a 2 from M-Town Lone Wolf, who said, could Marines go into Yemen?
They could. That's definitely possible. But I think they're more so being directed towards Hormuz. But we'll have to see once they start to get there. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Brooke Tiger Girl, who said, the option I wanted is, what the actual flipping heck?
Oh, I mean, that's an option. But big thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Clueless, who said, open oil up. Iran open straight. Venezuela thinking.
And I would have to say a big thanks to you for support. We'll have to see. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And with that, folks, that is the end of our Super Chats right there. And a huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel once again with that support. Because as we always say, kind of like a broadcasting channel that used to exist back in the day before they got defunded, I think actually they might be back, actually. I can't remember. Can't keep it straight. Too much chaos. But it's the viewer support that keeps us running, folks. So we do appreciate that very, very much. But it's now time to get our Morse code decoders. Tonight we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffness, Coach Kerberteric, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse says, let's hope that we can manage the Strait of Hormuz well. It would be good to see. LLT, LSA.
And ding, 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 ding. That's the sound of money. You got the dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And we got to congratulate you all greatly in getting that correct time and time again. This is truly an amazing and fantastic thing to see. And so with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to move on into our live chats. And due to time constraints, unfortunately, folks, we'll only be able to get three. I says three. And so with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Stormy Weather, who said, did you guys talk about that drone that was seen flying around the D.C. area yesterday? Because I saw it all over the news.
We did hear about it, and we actually covered it a little bit, but that was actually in the middle of the stream last night, actually. So, yes, we did cover it. And so I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
Also, by the way, I'm trying to make sure here. Let's see here. Cryptid Clippy. Let's see here. Cryptid, I'm not seeing your super chat in the system here. I'm not seeing it in here. So if it was sent in, it doesn't look like it actually went through because I'm not seeing it in the whole thing. I scrolled through the entire list here and I am not seeing it in here. So sadly, I don't think it made it though. But if you have a live chat question though, let us know and we can call it out here in just a second. But we also have a question here from none other than John Ferrario, who said, should the U.S. have some sort of cap on gas pricing as gas stations and oil producers are looking to up their prices?
Can you reread that one again?
Should the U.S. have some sort of cap on gas pricing as gas stations and oil producers are looking to up the price?
Generally, you can't do that, especially in a situation like this, because you could cap the gas price, but the price per barrel of oil isn't capped globally, so they could end up losing their shirts, refining the oil and trying to sell it because they can't sell it at a price to where they even break even at that point. So I'd say that probably wouldn't be the greatest of an idea, because that would require us to also be able to control the price of oil, which we can't do, sadly. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And we actually have one super chat to address before we get to the final question of the night. So Matthew, what do we got?
This one goes to Silence, who puts in a 10. It said, Dmitry Shostakovich, the second waltz was done by Andrei Dhru. Also, how many genres are we talking? I hit 363 different ones last year.
I don't think that many. Like maybe about a dozen, maybe. At the best, like the highest number. But I'd have to say that's a very interesting recommendation, Sound. So I have to listen to that one. Andre Roux is if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he's actually a pretty good, I guess you could say, composer and also a orchestrator these days. He's pretty good. And I've listened to some of his stuff before. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
Also, by the way, shout out to Cryptid Clippy. He was not mentioning a super chat. He was saying that I forgot to mention him in the Morse code decoders. So thank you very much, Cryptid, for that support right there. I'll be honest, I usually just keep a preset list because we usually have the same people generally doing it most nights. So I really don't modify it very much. So I must have missed yours right there. But a huge shout out to Cryptid Clippy for also helping to decipher the Morse code as well. And the final question of the night is going to go to none other than Miss Disa, who we just mentioned earlier as a fan Discord server moderator. Ms. Disa said, number of Iranian missiles and drones is increasing. And where are these coming from and why haven't they been taken out?
Generally, we're seeing that they're coming from underground facilities and then they're moved out into above ground launching platforms. So generally, the problem with that is that unlike TELs, which are fairly expensive to produce and manufacture and then field, these are actually pretty cheap and inexpensive, so they can field these almost to an unlimited extent. So the problem is that we're seeing that we're not putting enough attention towards striking those and knocking them out, or the Israelis aren't. So I think that is generally the number one issue that we've been seeing so far at the moment that's been leading to that still being an imminent and major threat within the area. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all. I have to say that it's even crazier to see that 12,000 people are still here with us live, almost 4 hours into the show. We had 27.5 thousand people here at the peak, and 250,000 of people have watched this show before it ended. We thank you all so much once again for watching. We hope you all have enjoyed, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. And so with that,
My turn.
Yes. And so that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And also, by the way, a big shout out to the casual 250,000 people that are here once again tonight. And we do appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source once again. Of course, a lot of news in the news segment, and also a lot of chat in the chat segment, of course. And we appreciate you all for sticking around. All 12,000 people that are literally still here as the stream is rounding out. And we will see you all tomorrow on the nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern and on that midday video as well, which hopefully we can make one tomorrow as well if there is news to cover. But we thank you all once again. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest and good night.